Hello, a very good morning to you and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis show. My name is Samson Ladi Anyenini. We are coming to you live from the Multi-TV studios, and this is your Joy News channel. You're also listening on radio at Joy 99.7 FM and over a dozen of affiliate stations across the country. You're also watching and listening via the internet, myjoyonline.com and multi-TV world/streams. January 2007, Daniel Charles Jima, MD, $60 million promissory notes guarantee. February 2013, over $90 million judgment debt. NIB managers in crisis meeting as they ran adverts assuring investors and customers the bank will not collapse. Will government continue to have business doing business? The 51 million Ghana judgment debt. Martin Amidu draws new Attorney General into the Woyome albatross as a client of her law firm, Ostro Invest, is struck out of the case at the Supreme Court. What's the way out? Our company, Ghana Incorporated, spends over 60% of the money it gets on wages of its over 600,000 staff. The CEO, John Dramani Mahama, is deeply worried there is no cash for public good projects. But the TUC wants to know how much of the bill is not, underline, is not part of the 50,000 Ghana cedis rent allowance he signed for the honorables. How much goes into ESBs for himself and his men and women, and the Article 71 class of staff in the Ghana Incorporated. We will examine his State of the Nation address and how it addresses current water and epileptic electricity crisis, etc., etc. The minority on a suicide mission and taking all for granted is a question. An answer will come soon. Well, very finally, groundnuts and roasted plantain sellers now have a lucrative business. They are hoarding all sheets pink. It's a pink sheet black market. The pink sheet scandal. Any implications for the ongoing presidential election petition? We'll examine all of these matters when we return with my guest on Newsfile. I'm Samson Ladi Anyenini. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile on Joy 99.7 FM. And as you know, this show is brought to you by the kindest sponsorship of MTN, Everywhere You Go, and Bank of Africa. As strong as a group, as close as a partner. You can send us your messages, your comments, your questions. Let them come in. 1422 is the text line. 1422 and 1760. You can also send me an email to newsfile@myjoyonline.com. You can also post your comments on our Facebook wall, Joy 997 FM. I'll introduce my guest to you shortly, but let's first of all take a listen to the President. And for those of you watching TV, watch the President deliver his State of the Nation address. What did he have to say about the elections, which is getting him a little bit of a flack?
We have come a long way since 1993, when the first president of the Fourth Republic, Jerry John Rawlings, delivered the first State of the Nation address under the Fourth Republican Constitution in this very house. Ghana's democratic credentials were further consolidated with the election of John Agyekum Kufuor and later Professor John Evans Atta Mills of blessed memory. Mr. Speaker, our recent presidential and parliamentary elections have been adjudged by both domestic and international observers as by far the most credible, transparent, free and fair since 1992. This shows that each step of our democratic journey has been marked by improvements. As Ghanaians, we must be proud of this achievement. Mr. Speaker, the Electoral Commission must take much of the credit for this feat. Since our return to constitutional rule in 1992, the EC has organized 6 successful elections. They have conferred victory where victory was due without fear or favor. They did this in the critical periods of 2000, 2008, and again in 2012. Our Electoral Commission has earned in the process an enviable reputation as arguably one of the best electoral institutions on the African continent.
All right, you just heard the President, John Dramani Mahama, and he had something to say specifically about the Electoral Commission deserving praise for having done a wonderful job. Some say that sounds like contemptuous of the pending presidential election petition at the Supreme Court. But some are also saying that it appears those who are claiming that that may sound contemptuous are not vetting their minds to the fact that whatever is said on the floor of Parliament is contempt-free. Now, the President has something to say about his first-term plans. Let's hear him.
In my first term as President, I'll focus on delivering on the following, which constitute the vital pillars underpinning our national development program. 1, putting the people first. 2, a strong and resilient economy. 3, expanding infrastructure. And 4, transparent and accountable government.
The President also has some plans for the health sector.
Improved health services cannot be overemphasized. It augments investment in all sectors. A sick population cannot generate the productivity needed to maintain the acceleration of our economy. Presently, our healthcare system still has personnel deficits and service deficiencies, despite the facility expansion and human capacity development programs that we have been implementing. In the next 4 years, we'll work towards improving access, service quality, increased personnel, enhanced working conditions across the various professions in the health sector. In furtherance of our plans, we will undertake the following: construction of an ultra-modern new teaching hospital for the University of Ghana Medical School. Start the processes for the establishment of regional hospitals in the Eastern and Upper East regions. We will continue work on the regional hospital project in Wa in the Upper West region. We will upgrade the Central and Volta regional hospitals into teaching hospitals to expand. We will upgrade the Central and Volta regional hospitals into teaching hospitals to expand the scope for training medical doctors and other healthcare professionals. We will commence work on 12 new district hospitals at Dodowa, Abetifi, Fomena, Garu, Kumau, Sekendi, Salaga, Tepa, Wenchi, Madina, and several others. The refurbishment of the Takrady European Hospital will commence in earnest. We will commence work on the new hospital in Kumasi to decongest the Komfanoche Teaching Hospital. We will initiate work on phase 1 of the Specialist Emergency Center at Kolebu Teaching Hospital. We will establish an additional 1,600 CHIPS compounds across the country by the end of 2016. Mr. Speaker, this will be consistent with our record over the last 4 years. In addition, we will initiate the necessary processes towards the construction of polyclinics, especially in the districts as well as the regions that currently lack such facilities. In embarking on this journey of expanding access, we will also begin to explore new modalities of public-private partnerships in health investment in a manner that brings new investment, expertise, and technology into the health sector, providing our citizens a variety of options of where they access their healthcare services. Mr. Speaker, there's an ongoing review of the operations of the National Health Insurance Scheme. Our goal is to ensure a more efficient, expanded, and sustainable delivery. We will work to reduce cost and eliminate fraud in the system. New improved claim processing centers will be set up, and improved IT systems will be put in place to enhance service and create a better platform for monitoring the scheme. The government has taken note of the last review workshop held and will present the recommendations issued therefrom, especially in respect to sustainable financing of the scheme, to Cabinet for consideration. We will pursue the implementation of the Mental Health Act in order to mainstream psychiatric treatment and care for our population into our healthcare system. Mr. Speaker, with regards to the deficit in health personnel, we will consolidate the gains made in the training of healthcare professionals through the establishment of the University of Allied and Health Sciences by transforming the Kintampo Rural Health Training Institute into a university college to support the training of physician assistants, both for our ambulance and emergency services, as well as the training and deployment of clinical psychologists and health inspectors. Mr. Speaker, we will scale up the training of midwives and nurses and allied health workers to fill the gap created by aging health professionals.
The president certainly had a lot to say about almost every sector of the economy, but let's listen to him finally on education.
Prioritize and expand access to education at all levels. We will aggressively address quality enhancement and outcomes at all levels by putting in place measures to monitor quality of education service delivery, especially teaching and learning at the various levels of our educational system. We will reward outstanding educational service providers to boost morale in the sector and work to improve gender parity in education. We will encourage community participation in the management of schools. We will work towards standardization and affordability in school fees. Mr. Speaker, I extend the hand of partnership to our social partners, the religious bodies, with long-standing roles in the provision of educational services and private sector operators of educational service, to engage in this national reconstruction exercise for expanding access and improving quality of education in Ghana. With specific reference to basic education, we will ensure that every child gets a head start by working effectively and practically to integrate kindergarten education into the existing system. To this end, district assemblies will be required to incrementally build new structures in all existing public schools to serve the needs of kindergarten education. We shall expand training of kindergarten teachers to ensure that our children all over the country acquire basic numeracy and literacy skills before they start primary education. It is also the objective of this government to eliminate the remaining schools under trees by the end of 2016. We intend to enforce compulsory basic school attendance and deepen pro-poor interventions like the distribution of free school uniforms, free exercise books, and free laptop computers. The school feeding program will be progressively expanded to all public basic schools in rural communities to satisfy the basic nutritional needs of our children. Mr. Speaker, we are committed to tackling the greatest challenges facing education at the secondary level in our country. Paramount among these is a lack of access occasioned by inadequate space and facilities for the large number of qualified junior high school graduates. To address the limitations imposed on access to secondary education, we will, over the next 4 years, construct a total of 200 new community-day senior high schools. Mr. Speaker, this year we will initiate a bill for parliamentary consideration towards the establishment of a new university in the Eastern region. This university will be committed to sustainable environmental development and research. In addition, we will begin the roadmap for converting our existing 10 public polytechnics into fully fledged technical universities.
Thank you very much for keeping your dials on Joy 99.7 FM and our affiliate stations across the country, and also watching your Joy News channel on multi-TV. Now, you heard the president say a whole lot of stuff that he wants to do. Great many public good projects. But where is the money coming from? That is his major worry, because about 60% of all that we are able to generate internally goes to public sector salaries and all the attendant payments. So how is he going to fund all the noble projects that he's talking about? That will be part of the examination of the issues of the State of the Nation address that we'll be looking at, and also the electricity problems. How did he address the problem? How did he address the issue of water situation, the water situation, and also the issues of gas, for example? We'll look at all of these in detail. My guest seated in the studio from my extreme right is Abdul Malik Kweku Baku Jr. He's a regular panelist. He's back from his hideouts in New York. Welcome to the show, Kweku.
Yeah, thank you.
Abdul Malik Kweku Baku Jr. is the managing editor of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. Now, Felix Kwachi Ofosu is a member of the government communications team. He's also here, and he also belongs to the platform, that group research platform. Thank you very much for joining us, Felix. Also, Nana Akomia, a former MP and communications director of the New Patriotic Party. Good morning and welcome.
Morning, Samson.
Okay, great to have you on the show as always. We will soon be joined by Dr. Sule Gareba. He's here but getting ready to join us soon. He is a senior policy advisor at the presidency. Okay, he knows all about the, is it a 42 page or what's the page? 20, how many pages of what the president had to talk about? I'm talking about a 23-page State of the Nation address. Thank you very much for staying with us. And later on in the show, we'll be discussing other matters coming up. I'm sure you're aware of the order of the court, commercial court, to the NIB to pay in excess of 90 million US dollars to Dominion Corporate Trust for some. It's in respect of some judgment debt. And Charles Jimen's name come up again, and other matters arising from that judgment debt issue. And former Attorney General, vigilante citizen vigilante Martin Namidu, you also know, has also been trying to, raising some red flags and bringing in the new Attorney General in the Woyome matter. We'll look at that one also. And very finally, we shall also look at the pink sheets brouhaha and its implications, if any, for the ongoing Supreme Court petition. Dr. Sule Gareba is now here with us. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning and thank you very much.
Great.
This is my maiden show with
yes.
my good friends.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. And so your messages are welcome 1422 and 1760. Also email me Newsfile at myjoyonline.com and put your comments also on our Facebook wall, Joy997 FM. I think it's right to start with Dr. Sule Gareba. The president had a lot to share and a lot of plans on the health sector, on the education front, electricity, water, almost everything that is crucial to the survival of the nation. He has something to say about it. For you, among all of them, where did you feel the president coming out showing the greatest confidence and the ability to be able to achieve the things he spoke about within the shortest possible time? I think that is the major question on the minds of many people. State of the Nation addresses, we hear them over and again, but how much is implemented?
Well, thank you very much. And, it's important that you raise this question because paramount in his mind were three fundamental things. The first one, which is central to the survival of our country, is his admonition that a partnership has to emerge that allows us to stand together as one nation, one people with a common destiny. And that is a crucial ingredient, that a country whose fabric is torn apart by disunity cannot remotely galvanize the collective energies of its people to address the fundamental crises that are facing our economy, but also the challenge of providing services to ordinary citizens. The second one that clearly those who were listening saw incredible passion shown by the president is around the fact that it is inexcusable for the basic services of water, electricity, health, and education to be unreachable to our citizens. And in that respect, he did not only elaborate the plans for those service improvements from the provisioning point of view in terms of new investments, better emphasis on the more effective management of existing investments, but he also called on citizens because he says, look, it takes two to tango. That citizens must also be organized enough to constantly and persistently demand accountability for the services that is being rendered to them. That it should not be left to government alone to continue to push the limits on provisioning, but the citizens have a responsibility to be so organized that they can engage and interrogate the service delivery channels. And this relates to many things around which citizens and their representatives have demanded accountability for. We now know that over the last 5-6 years, thanks to a vigorous parliament, the Public Accounts Committee, that takes seriously the Auditor General's report and challenges the system, not just politicians especially, but focuses on the system and ensure that people have spent money in the right way and for the right things and are accountable for it. We now have a culture that is emerging in the public services of vigilance, because you know that if you deviate and you are cited in the Auditor General's report, the People's Representative Parliament will call you into account. The third one was the introduction of other mechanisms to ensure, and you mentioned issue of implementation, that these challenges that he enumerated and the visionary plans he elaborated upon cannot be delivered simply by relying on the public budget alone, and that more and better and more innovative mechanisms will need to be galvanized, to be brought on board so that these plans can be achieved. He called, for instance, in education, on the social partners, religious bodies and institutions who long have participated actively in investment in education to come and participate in a renewed venture. But also, he talked about public-private partnerships.
All right. You are the coordinator of policy at the presidency. That's such a very critical office to hold. Now, you must have heard other people suggest that the president's good intentions, robust, projects he intends to embark on, but he doesn't say how much will go where.
That's absolutely right. And already, as you were recounting the length, these are 42 pages. You saw the energy with which he read and delivered this presentation. That is a very legitimate demand. However, what usually happens in a State of the Nation address is that it is followed immediately in the next couple of weeks by a budget.
That is so.
He mentioned quite clearly that our finances are stripped to the bones, but the Minister of Finance will now allocate budget ceilings to all these agencies and institutions that will deliver on this. And once those budget ceilings are allocated, you then go to real benchmarking and target setting, because we're cutting our coat according to our cloth, and so we need to see the size of the cloth, match it against the aspirations that the president has elaborated upon. Fortunately, a good number of these initiatives are in the pipeline. And part of the process of constructing what he actually speaks about is A, to be sure that money is available for them, and B, to be sure that they will be completed when they are started.
All right, I'll hear Nana Kumia's preliminary comments on the State of the Nation address, and then subsequently we'll return to a bit more of the fine details, and more importantly, what appears to be one of the president's major worries. Where will the cash come from? When almost 60% plus of it is being used to pay salaries. Nana, I know that we are being told that the opposition will present what is supposed to be the true state of the nation. I don't know where you place that legally in the governance arrangement structure of the country, but before you bring that on Tuesday or on Wednesday, what did you make of this address?
Well, thank you, Samson. Let me say good morning to my co-panelists and your viewers out there. The president came to Parliament. He delivered what is supposed to be the state of Ghana. I was listening to Joy FM 2-3 minutes ago, just before I came into the studio, and they were describing the state of Ghana as one of Kwashiorkor. One of your panels on your Joy FM morning show.
No, forget about that show.
Well, no, but yes. I agree entirely.
That's the loony side of the news.
I agree entirely. The state of Ghana today is one of Kwashiorkor, which is the Ghana word for malnutrition or something.
Joy FM doesn't have any such position on the state of the nation.
No, I had referred to your panelist, not to Joy FM.
I see.
Now, if you took the State of the Nation address that the president delivered on Thursday, and you took the one that was delivered last year, last 2 years, last 3 years, last 4 years, and you didn't know the dates, they are all the same. It's just a recitation of sectorial plans made by the ministries. We will do A, B, C, D, E, F. This one will say we'll do A, B, C, D, E, F. They put it together, and the president comes to read it to us. Exactly the same. Take the one that was delivered in 2009, 2010. The same issues. The one that President Mills delivered, the one that President Mahama has delivered, the same. There's nothing. John Mahama himself, he had given a prescription of how State of the Nation should go when he was a member of Parliament in the opposition. He said that the State of the Nation should tell us where we are today, the basic critical issues facing us today. Number two, how the president proposes to solve those issues. And number three, how he's going to do it. Three main ingredients: where we are, where you are taking us, and how you are taking us. If you look at the speech that he delivered, it doesn't satisfy any of these criteria that he himself had put down. A State of the Nation address is supposed to deal with the critical issues facing the people. It's supposed to show us a clear way out, and it's supposed to get the buy-in to inspire all of us that, yes, there's a clear way out that all of us can follow. To inspire, provide a vision, and to inspire us to that vision. There was nothing like that, unfortunately. So I
don't know what State of the Nation address you're looking at, because you're saying that it's virtually empty. It's supposed to address critical issues of the state, and you don't find that it was able to address any critical issue of the state. He spoke about the basic services. He spoke about electricity, which gives him sleepless nights. He spoke about how to resolve it. He gave you a plan. I don't know what you are looking at or which State of the Nation you are reading.
Samson, I have said to you, look at the State of the Nation address in 2009. Look at the one in 2010.
Look at the one in 2008.
Look at the one in
2007.
Look at the one in 1999. It's the same thing. it's the same thing. Sectors bring their plans. They put it together. The president comes to read it to us. And so John Mahama himself said that this is not the way State of the Nation should go. That's what he himself said. I have the record.
Yeah, we
here.
have read that transat once.
So
Kukubako
when
brought
you
it up
come,
the last time
yes.
we had a discussion on his address that he gave to Parliament.
So when you come, and all you do is also put together sectorial plans and read it to us, then we are just standing still. That's what I'm saying. There's nothing new. There's no inspiration. There's no vision. It's just the same thing, different. And you take the State of the Nation. I was going to bring you a couple and mark out all the areas of. You think it's just the same thing. And so the prescription that he himself gave has not been followed. And we are just following the same old pattern of ministries and sectors putting together their plans, and the president coming to read it to us.
Okay, thank you. Those are your preliminary comments also. But I return, and I think that you would have to answer the question, if what you've just done is not what is the usual politics of opposition, because I am looking at the State of the Nation address, and I have the summary version of 23 pages, and you see clear issues, clear matters. Dr. Garaba has been, intimating that you want to intervene, but you see, I want us to do the first 5 minutes each for all of you, and then we return. So take note and return, and take him on as best as you can. Felix.
Well, thank you very much, Samson, and good morning to your cherished listeners, and good morning to my colleague panelist. It is said that cometh the hour, cometh the man. We've had a number of challenges recently, and therefore when the time came for a State of the Nation's address to be delivered by His Excellency the President, all Ghanaians, and justifiably so, we're looking forward to hearing him speak in a manner that convinces them that he has the plan and what it takes to move this country to the next level, in spite of the achievements that we've chalked over the last 2 or 3 decades. And that is precisely what President Mahama delivered last week, Thursday. I mean, this State of the Nation's address has to count among the most inspiring and comprehensive that have ever been delivered since the start of the 1992 democratic experiment. I'm glad that Nana Akommea laid down what he calls the benchmarks by which...
It's not what he called.
Well,
it's what John Mahama said once.
He reiterated the position taken by President Mahama when he was in opposition. He said that in the State of the Nation's address, it needs to be stated clearly where we are as a nation. In other words, what contemporary challenges we face, given what may have happened in the past, where the president wants to take us. In other words, what the plans, the visions, the proposals, and the programs are in order for us to come out of whatever situation we are in, and how the president is going to ensure that. Now, all these 3 benchmarks were adequately met in the State of the Nation's address.
Okay.
On the very first page.
The two of you obviously are reading from 2 different
like you
State of the
stated,
Nation
like
addresses.
it's usual for the opposition to try to put a dampener on whatever the ruling government does. So I can understand Nana Akommea's attempt to engage in some politics. It's allowed. But I'm saying that anybody who heard President Mahama speak, anybody who spent that 1.5 hours listening to him, would have been left in no doubt that the man covered virtually all ground. It is impossible in a statement like this to speak about everything. But to a very, very large extent, President Mahama indeed touched on the issues that matter most to the ordinary people of this country. The president stated his vision on the very first page of the address. Indeed, if you look at the 7th paragraph, it reads, Mr. Speaker, I entered public service out of a genuine desire to help make a difference in the lives of our people. My vision for this country is to create a conducive national environment in which our children grow happily into responsible adults, where workers are proud to work and defend our national values, where improved maternal health reduces the hazards of childbearing, where teachers use their influence to positively mold the next generation, a Ghana in which we all create and share in the benefits. So that is the president's vision at the very onset of this address. Again, the president went on and spoke about challenges that we have. And let us not run away from it. Look, we've made tremendous progress over the last 2 or 3 decades. We have achieved sustained economic growth. But along the line, we have had challenges. Some of the challenges have been there for God knows how long. In recent times, we have faced very serious difficulties with the electricity situation, with the water situation, issues relating to removal of subsidies. We've had some difficulties with economic imbalances and what have you. The president stated those clearly. He again indicated that he is deeply concerned about these problems and went on to say in clear, unmistakable terms how he is going to address these challenges. Now, when you come to the next round, where we delve into the specifics, I'll read out some to you, and I'm sure Dr. Gaba would also give us the major policy underpinnings that went into this. So, they claim that the president did not meet what a State of the Nation's address is supposed to churn out. It's, for me, a bit unfounded. Again, the president, beyond stating what the problems are and giving us a plan, went on to give specific details about how he is going to execute those plans. He even went on to say that when the finance minister comes, he will provide a financial framework within which these difficulties are going to be addressed, within which these plans that he's outlined are going to be addressed. So I think it is a bit unfair to attempt to dismiss a statement, 42 pages of concrete practical solutions. Maybe the president avoided the sort of fanciful promises that maybe Nana Kumia and his colleagues in the MPP have become used to. His was not to convince Ghanaians to vote for him right away. His duty was to spell out the issues that matter to Ghanaians and tell them how he is going to address it. And I think that to that extent, the president did an absolutely fantastic job, which must be acknowledged by everyone analyzing.
Thank you very much. Abdul Malik.
Well, same old story across the political divide. Go back, check, do your research from Nkrumah's days to today, but more particularly within the Fourth Republic. It's predictable, the reactions from the opposition to sessional addresses or message on State of the Nation. Across the divide, that's what has been happening. You take your time to analyze, you will see that all issues, maybe not all, I may be exaggerating because it's difficult to actually capture all issues, particularly when we all have different interests. But the basic issues, the main issues are captured in all this message on State of Nation. And yet, you would have situations where people will have differences. I think it's even natural, in my candid opinion. It's to be expected. You know, perhaps what is problematic is sometimes the difficulty to accept that, look, this is an important issue, this is an issue we can highlight, and then try to find out best to make it work. And that's because this is a multi-party democracy, and sometimes people think in doing that kind of admission, you may be giving undue advantage to your political opponent. Otherwise, you go and check the Hansard, our own president today, who was a member of parliament, did similar things to President Kufuor's State of Nation address. The NPP side thought Kufuor had done a fantastic presentation, a comprehensive one. Mr. Mahama, then MP, didn't think so. And that's where he stated the formula, which we've read here before. And yet, when I took a look at the Kufuor State of Nation address, he had addressed so many things, but there were few things that didn't come up. And the opposition legitimately, if you like, picked it up and raised it. So really, my attitude is not to waste too much time on that aspect of the discourse, you know, but perhaps with your guidance, we pick specifics and interrogate those specifics and see how viable and feasible they are, and then ask for timelines. You know, there is a peculiar situation here. Mr. Mahama, as you indicated, you played back, it's his first term. This is his first term.
That is so.
Constitutionally, it's true. This is his first term. But you see, he's a hybrid of a sort, because he was vice president in the Mills administration, became president the same term, that is, finished the unexpired term of President Mills, and now he's president. So, and you realize, even in his own delivery, there was somewhere he said, our 4 years. So there's an admission that he's a hybrid, cuts across the two administrations, the Mills administration and the Mahama administration, there's a certain umbilical cord. And so when you look back, that's what I've been trying to do. I checked the 2009, 2010, 2011, and 12 State of Nation addresses. And is it legitimate to ask questions of this president as to the non-fulfillment of some of the key things that President Mills articulated? Is it legitimate? I think so, because if it's not legitimate, the president himself in this delivery, this current one, would not have been recalling those achievements virtually as part of his achievements. So you see, there's a certain tightrope to walk in terms of doing the analysis, and in subsequent submissions that I make, I'll bring up some of those specifics and ask what is happening. You do so in order to somehow even assess the viability or the possibility, the realization, how they could, actualize some of the projects here. Because you can say anything. As for talking, it's easy. Articulating promises is easy. It is the delivery of resource that I think has been part and parcel of the problem. So in judging this present State of Nation address, I would raise certain issues that were captured in 2009, 2010, and 2011, and ask whether truly we should just live with the promises or whether there's the capacity to deliver on them.
It's okay. I would like you to start right away and go to the issues that are of critical concern to you and raise them so that we have the benefit of the presence of Dr. Sule Garba here, and he would also make some input in respect of the issues
before I do that, there was a point Dr. Garba made which I found a bit striking. I may be wrong. Maybe I'm seeking education here. The question about budget following immediately
after the address.
Is that correct? Because I'm not too sure. When do we release our budgets?
But that is what we expect from now.
No, what time do we release our budgets? For some time it's changed. Is it not at the end of the fiscal year? Yes, so that's November. Yes.
But
and we are in February.
Educators, in between transition periods, the budget that is released in November is actually a very light estimate in anticipation
it's interim.
It's interim. In anticipation that elections might create, you give the opportunity of a new government being in place.
So are you telling us now, as a matter of a point of information, that government intends releasing a budget sooner? That is new information. I was looking at how we have framed, we have crafted since 2005.
Yes, you're absolutely right. The normal timing of the release of a budget in the 4-year period when a government is in place is November. Parliament approves it in December. The fiscal year starts January 1st. But in a year which is the last year of a term of an administration, the budget which is presented is actually a very light preliminary estimates, allowing for a substantive budget to be presented when the new government is established.
And we understand that the finance ministry is putting together the budget already.
Yes, so I wanted to be clear in my mind. So this is information that is being made.
Situation which happens every 4 years.
It sounds logical, so I wouldn't debate it. You see, the point about, and that's why I said it's a difficult exercise I'm going to undertake, but because President Mahama happens to cut across 2 administrations, perhaps there may be a legitimate basis. When I was looking at the State of Nation Address 2010, if you come to housing, there's a place that we are told that the National District Assembly's Rental Housing Project Task Force will be established to oversee the project and make sure that this problem is given the highest priority. The president then was talking about rentals. In most countries, the housing for the lower and lower middle income groups is the responsibility of local authorities, and Ghana should be no exception. Beginning this year, in addition to whatever the central government is doing in the housing sector, we shall expect our metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies to invest a sizable proportion of their district assemblies commons fund in rental housing for lower and middle income groups. To make sure this happens, the assemblies will be directed to commit a substantial portion of their common fund allocations to rental housing. And that's where the prescription was made. A National District Assemblies Rental Housing Project task force will be established to oversee the project and make sure that this problem is given the highest priority. Did it happen? It may have, I don't know. If it did, there isn't enough publicity so that we can even monitor, track the effectiveness of that. You know, so that's another point. Another one, Representation of the People Amendment Act, ROPA. I can't read the entire thing because it will take too much time. But the president made a pledge that this year, I shall constitute, this year meaning 2010, I shall constitute a multi-partisan group under the guidance of the Electoral Commission to revisit the whole issue of the registration and voting of Ghanaians abroad.
That has not happened.
I don't know. Maybe Dr. Gariba could tell us. If it did, perhaps it did without publicity. And if it did without publicity, we are unable to track it, so we can't tell. There are many things that members of parliament, the first says, secondly, for members of parliament, we will implement 2 new programs that we promised in our manifesto. The first is to establish a member of parliament constituency development fund, separate and apart from the district assembly's commons fund. Secondly, we'll begin the program to construct and finish a standard member of parliament constituency office in each of the 230 constituencies and to pay one administrator identified by an incumbent member of parliament a fixed monthly stipend.
Is it your understanding that this is supposed to be different from Job 600?
Of course, constituency offices are based in the constituency.
And that has also not happened.
Dr. Gariba may provide an answer. And then, of course, other not minor, critical things like the commitment to full-scale investigations into the MV Benjamin thing, the cocaine that turned into Kokonte. Committees were set up to bring up the details on this matter. Where are the reports?
So it brings up the issue of commitment to implement
the operationalization of such things.
Okay.
If they have been done or some initiatives were taken, then lack of publicity or, you know, also is disabling civil society and the media from doing critical scrutiny and tracking of such things. So that's the idea.
All right.
There are definitely things that were operationalized. Let's be fair. There are definitely things that were executed. But what I'm saying is that all governments, and this is a standard practice, check all State of Nation addresses. They all contain promises. What we have to be doing is to track and see if they were operationalized in terms of execution.
All right. Dr. Sule Gariba, this brings up the very critical issue, and I raised it to you before, where the citizens will look at this as one of the political rhetorics once again, that we are told that ABC will happen, and they never see the light of day.
Well, thank you very much. This is, I mean, I really appreciate Kweku's meticulous nature in going back in time, and the general commentary that State of the Nation's addresses are, encapsulate sometimes the totality of key plans and programs that are implemented by government. Usually, on balance, most of them would be at least attempted, if not completed. And if you look in considerable detail, the glass is more than half full and not half empty. The reality is that certain nitty-gritties may not have been tackled, and the ones that Kweku chose to emphasize upon, I would have to go back and review the records to give you accuracy of what was and was not implemented. But what is crucial?
But is it not important that if you are doing the next address, you are interested in looking at what was promised and has not been delivered, so you capture it and follow through?
Absolutely. And what usually happens is you begin with the fundamentals. There are certain fundamentals that when you do a State of the Nation address, you express, absolute commitment that these fundamentals, when they are achieved, will cascade into the success of your programs. And when you look at those fundamentals, turning the economy around was a fundamental that ran through the 4 years previously. The record is quite admirable in terms of single-digit inflation, in terms of ensuring that economic growth has been quite escalated, and that, but then at the same time, you know that these things happen in cyclical ways. So when you look at the promise from 2009, follow through up to a peak of 2011, when deficits were substantially reduced and the economy was on an even keel, then you come back to that cyclical gyration where the economy tumbled for a number of reasons which he enumerated here. So on balance, if you look back at the 4-year period, you will say most of the economic targets were achieved until the economy suffered a hiccup. And even when it suffered a hiccup, the important thing is government's ability and the capacity to correct the hiccup and begin, an upward escalation.
But is it good when you abandon what some may have taken to be key promises and had expected you to deliver, and they have not been delivered in a government that you're still part of, and then you abandon them in the next address?
You can't use the address by itself to do an evaluation of what you promise and the balance. These are source documents that are available elsewhere. The National Development Planning Commission, for example, has an annual progress review, which is released every year, meticulously looking at what the targets were, what the achievements were, and what the variance was. And this document is submitted to Parliament every year. It never really comes to parliamentary debate, but it is available for Parliament to scrutinize. The President is also enjoined every year to give an account of stewardship. And then in the last 4 years, in the 4 years ending, you are required to come to Parliament and do same, which is what President Mahama did on January 4th, 2013. So there are source documents on all of those. And back to Kweku's very specific reference points, would have to go to those source documents to be able to provide a status of all of those nitty-gritties. And in fact, if you look at them throughout time, those promises add up to quite a quantum. And in the rendition of how you did, you don't go back to every single one of them and give a status.
I've heard you talk about an implementation, body within the presidency. Is that it?
It's not so much an implementation body. In
Monitor.
fact, the president is so passionate about the question of delivery. The issue Kweku raised and the one that you just raised too, that the delivery of these processes and projects is absolutely sacrosanct to the trust reposed in the president. And what he's planning to do is create a very small unit that does two things: implementation backstopping. Because in September, if you recall, he made a policy announcement around September 2nd, 3rd. And it was absolutely, the experience from that time suggested that just having 1 or 2 people follow up with the ministry and say, this promise was made, where are you? Do you have any implementation difficulties? Sometimes they have genuine implementation difficulties. For instance, late release of budgets or non-release of budgets, that the presidency can exert its weight to ensure that that is implemented. That's different from a monitoring and evaluation system, which waits till the end of the implementation to assess why things didn't happen.
How soon do we expect this body to be in place?
It's actually in place already.
It's already in place.
In fact, it is the body, along with other advice and experts, that helped the president in constructing the State of the Nation.
Do you mind telling us who constitutes this body?
Right now, it is in the Policy Coordination Unit. So I am implicated in that. And I'm working very closely with another presidential advisor who has been named, Mr. P.V. Obing, who is right in the presidency. But the interesting thing is that apart from supporting the strategic plan and the elaboration of a vision, which is a coalition of all programs and projects that ministries, and Nana Akomia is right. yes, State of the Nation address implicates sector ministers to bring the things they are committed to, which they know will be implemented, and then we aggregate it. But on top of that, this process will then move to the Planning Commission, and the same group will work with the Minister of Finance in elaborating the budget. Then the National Development Planning Commission will put it into plans. That way, if there are any glitches in the implementation path, that they can be brought quickly to the attention of the presidency, and the presidency can intervene to unlock any glitches. This president does not want to wait till the end of the year for a promise not to be achieved, and then the ministries give the excuse that...
Take for example, his timelines that he gave for solving the electricity, problem that we face in the country. A judge many years ago, referred to it as the epileptic electricity, situation in Ghana. How will this particular outfit help in facilitating the realization of the timelines for the provision of these goods?
Thank you very much. That's an important issue, and one that right now, as we speak, he is preparing details of. One step is to ensure that those promises that are passed on to him by the implementing agencies are actually kept, and to physically inspect that they will be kept. So as we speak, Monday and Tuesday, the president himself, apart from the fact that his staff have already reviewed the transcripts to be sure of the dates, himself will go to Abuja, will go to Bui, to be absolutely certain and for Ghanaians to know that the 200 plus megawatts of new generation that he has promised will be on stream by April is actually going to happen. So that's one step. The second one is, as I indicated, to not take things for granted, to constantly follow up, literally weekly. He's instructed us, go and keep checking. Don't sit in your office. PV, go and check. If there's any problem that we need to deal with that will impede the situation, let us know so we can deal with it.
And if people are not delivering what they're supposed to be delivering, then HERS roll.
HERS will not only roll, that's where in several aspects of this, it's also challenging citizens that don't just sit and wait until 4 years. Citizens must also, and last September, October, when we will go and sit around with the Ministry of Energy, and they will tell us, oh, it appears load shedding has abated. 3 of us on the panel will say, hey, but I'm an ordinary citizen. In my area, it has not abated.
I see.
So don't just keep telling us the official line. So it is an interactive process.
Okay, so how is the president going to fund this? Because he's worried, as I put it earlier, about the funds, because internally generated funds, 60%, over 60%, used to pay salaries. How is he going to fund that? And you spoke about partnership. In the end, I'll also finally want to find out from you how he feels about the boycotts or the walkouts by the minority. They actually walked out on him.
Well, first of all, let me tackle that first. I think that they didn't walk out on him, okay? They simply abandoned their seats in listening to a State of the Nation address. And State of the Nation address, as the name says, is an address to the nation. Parliament, and it is done on the floor of Parliament. Parliament is simply an instrument, a conveyor belt. So if 120 MPs decide that they won't convey it to their constituents, that's a matter for them. It is their right.
But he must be concerned. You spoke about his concern about partnership, which he called rally everybody around.
Indeed, he's extended the olive branch.
That he spoke about, yeah.
He has stressed it so many times and clearly, and Nana being a close friend of him, knows deep in his heart that he's committed to these messages. So that one is in no doubt.
Right.
But this is, as Kweku said, this is politics. Politicians choose different mechanisms. NDC people have done it before. It's being done now. What is important is that the nation heard. The nation listened, the nation heard. I had a lot of people send me messages saying that the passion with which he delivered was absolutely central. That is what is most important.
Okay.
But back to your question.
How does he pay for it?
How is he going to pay for this? He's introduced 2 mechanisms. One is cutting our coat according to our cloth. being absolutely committed to aligning budgets with promises. That is on the public budget. But the second one, a window he has opened, it's been building up for some time. Ghana, now as a lower middle income country, has a variety of funding mechanisms that's open to it. And he's opening the Pandora's box and saying that we should no longer rely entirely on public budgets. Ghana is open for business. Private sector investors who want to deliver health services come on board. Private sector investors in particular, in his promise to double energy generation. He's making this promise not because the public purse will necessarily pay for it. Electricity is good business. Asogli has mobilized investment, both domestic and international, to start producing over 200 megawatts of electricity. When you open that more, once our gas reserves are opened up, we expect to be able to generate the impetus for hopefully billions of dollars of private investment with a permissive legal environment which now allows independent power production.
The TUC, and I believe many Ghanaians, and be very brief about that, are asking him, if you say about over 60% of the money generated is used to pay salaries, they want to know how much of that is not a part of the 50,000 Ghana cedi, rent allowance to 270 MPs. He's already signed that. Is he going to give them a $70,000, loan facility? ESB's Article 71 holders. Is he going to cut back on all of these?
Thank you very much. And I'm very pleased that the TUC has raised that challenge, because it is critical for Ghanaians to start to see the figures. And I was speaking with the Minister of Finance, and plans are afoot to begin disclosure of these kinds of situations so that ordinary Ghanaians know. As we speak, we're going to start wage negotiations so that ordinary Ghanaians know what doctors are making now, what they were making a year ago, the quantum increases that have occurred versus what they are now requesting. But at the same time, the president is saying, in addition to those kinds of disclosures, citizens must start to ask the question, what are we getting in return in the form of productivity? When salaries generally across the board have increased between 40 to 50%, have we gotten a commensurate jump in productivity? Even 10% in productivity? Because if we did, the quantum of resources available to share would be much larger. But to get back to your point, look, facilities that are provided to Parliament for it to do its work are essential elements in the growth of our democracy. The admiration that Ghana is given globally today is because a new arm of legitimate democracy has occurred, and that is registered in the 275 MP. So I have no apologies that the president has signed checks for 50,000 cedis for rent allowance for members of parliament who have abandoned their villages and their professions to come and live in Accra to serve our dear nation Ghana. All I hope is that they'll stay around in parliament.
Just that there are those who believe that if he signs those checks, he shouldn't come complaining again. And you are watching and listening to Newsfile on Joy 99.7 FM on radio and on your Joy News channel on Multi TV. You just heard me interacting with Dr. Sule Garba, and I gave him quite a bit of time because of the critical role he played in this whole State of the Nation address. Now, Nana, listening to Dr. Sule Garba, you get some hope, you get some assurance that there are pragmatic processes to ensure that the promises are delivered.
No, unfortunately, I don't. Let me just take a second to go back to what the president said when he was commenting on the State of the Nation address. Kufuor's 2005 State of the Nation address has all the elements that were present in John Mahama's State of the Nation address. And yet, John Mahama described it in these words. Mr. Speaker, we had expected a very exciting address that will lift up the spirit of the nation and get all the people of the country behind the president to move the nation forward. Unfortunately, this address failed to excite.
And you say that address that he's criticizing this way had all the elements that John Mahama wanted.
The elements that John Mahama had in his address.
And
yet he said that this address totally failed to lift up the nation.
And having said what you just said, would you want to revise what you had said earlier, that the address lacked all the things that John Mahama wants an address to contain? Because you have just said that
No. It's a very simple point. Because when he said this address, the Kufuor's address, failed to excite, he then went on to give a prescription of how an address should be. So you would expect that when it was his turn, he would depart from the prescription he had criticized to the prescription he had prescribed.
So like Kwekubaku said, this is the normal thing. We should expect it.
It's not there at all. So, and if we had time, I would have given you many instances of what the comment that he himself made.
Let's look at the present, the address before us now.
I was amused when my good friend Sule Garba was talking about plants are food, plants are food, plants are food. When you sit in parliament as long as I have, you hear this all the time. But you see, I agree totally with the prescription John Mahama gave in 2005, that the State of the Nation address should not be a recitation of sectorial plans, manifesto promises. That it should address the basic concrete conditions that confront Ghanaians and provide a clear way out of those conditions.
The portion about his solution to the electricity problem.
Electricity.
Doesn't it answer what you just said?
Electricity. We were told that there was a 200 megawatt shortfall. And so, because of that, we embarked on nationwide load shedding from August 2012 because of 200 megawatts. We have an installed capacity of 2,200 megawatts. So, if the whole nation is having 2,200 and 200 goes out, we've had load shedding nationwide because of that 200 out of 2,200. For how many months? Since August last year. The president himself told us that that load shedding was going to end middle of November. We are in the middle of February. It's getting worse.
Have you not heard the explanation why that deadline was not met?
Explanation? Is that what we want to hear? Who cannot give an explanation? As for explanation, everybody can give an explanation.
It ought to be credible.
You can give better explanations.
It ought to be credible.
Now, what's the new deadline? We are told April. Is that it? And what is the cost? First, they said it was 200 megawatts because some gas pipeline got broke. Now they say that because VRA cannot pay the bills. Even the reasons given, depending on who's speaking, whether it's Gridco, whether it's the president, whether it's the electricity company, different reasons. Different schedules. Now they themselves describe it as severe load shedding. From the load shedding that was supposed to end in November last year, in February 2013, it's moved to severe load shedding. So what are you telling Ghanaians? Now, let me just start with the economy. We were told that the economy is the second pillar of the president's vision. And we're told that we've got one of the highest growth rates in the world. They used to say that we had the highest growth rates. Now they've changed it to one of the highest growth rates. But Samson, now that you have the second highest or one of the highest growth rates in the world, look at what's happening to jobs. Look at what's happening to the exchange rate. You have some of the highest growth rates in the world, and where the job situation is getting worse. The whole entire growth is coming because we are digging oil from the ground. That's all. The real sectors, agriculture, manufacturing, fishing, the real sectors that employ people are all falling. The only portion that is growing is the digging of the oil from the ground. That's all. Now, we've been told that we have single-digit inflation. The president made a lot of boasting about it in his address. Single-digit inflation, longest period. Hey. 9% single-digit. But Treasury bill rate is 23% as we speak. Interest rate is over 25% as we speak. Now, when you have a single-digit inflation rate of 9% for how many years? How come Treasury bill, the interest the government itself pays on its borrowing, is 23%? How does that gel? We are told that 60% of our internal revenue goes on wages and salaries. 60%. And the present prescription is that we have to look at the level of wages. That cannot be the prescription. Because the level of wages as it is now is not enough for most workers. So how can you even talk of looking at that level? Indeed, the TUC herself noticed that the levels must go up. They are going to embark on minimum wage and other wage negotiations. And it's going to go up. So this prescription that we are spending 60% of our internal revenue on wages, and so we must look at the level of wages, will not hold.
Did you find that he doesn't have a problem if that much goes, insofar as there is evidence to show that the civil servants are working to justify that kind of payment? There is increased productivity.
The civil servants are, like the word is, civil servants. The politicians are their bosses. It is we, the politicians or the leaders, the president being the head of it, to ensure that people work. I mean, you work at Joy FM. Your bosses or the people who work under you, you should ensure that they work. If they are not working and you go and tell them they have to work before you pay them, they are working as far as they are concerned. If they don't meet your standards, you have to ensure that they meet the standards. You are the boss. You pay their salaries. Now, if you have 60% going for public sector salaries, so you have only 40%, and all these promises that you've made, how are you going to deal with them? Because wages are actually going to go up. The president was very candid. He said that now the meat is down to the bone. There's nothing else left. And really, that is the state of the economy. That you have a situation where President John Mahama hands over power to himself. And it is a nation, he hands over to himself a nation that the basic services, the most basic of services, electricity, water, gas, have been compromised. He hands over to himself an economy where he himself, one second, he hands over an economy. Making. He hands over, is my making?
No, I'm asking.
Okay. He hands over to himself an economy that he himself describes as down to the bone. That is the state of the economy that he himself has indicated. Now, when you say it's down to the bone and workers' salaries and so on should be looked at and so on, you look at the record of the government over the last few years. They will pay all these monies to Woyome. How does that generate confidence and sacrifice among the population? How?
The former president spoke about who caused some.
You look at the election.
Who caused the judgment debt? It's also important.
According to the government itself, the man didn't have a contract. So they've actually taken the man to the court to beg the court to get the money back for them. So who caused him?
Just 2 days ago, there's another $90 million judgment debt on the NIB, which the state is the biggest stakeholder in it. This was caused as far back as 2007 and 2009.
Just 2-3 years ago, there was a cost to the country because the NDC government cancelled a contract, a petroleum exploration contract, and we had to pay $30 million. Just 2-3 years ago. So when you pay monies to the kind of monies that we pay to Woyome, you look at the kind of election spending that went on last year, where all kinds of groups who've come up, something for Mahama, and you know, they go around collecting public funds for their. How are you going to get the citizens to tie their belts to go along with you? It's a problem.
Okay, if you can address this very final point of it, so we can move on now. The NPP minority wants to continue its boycott of the president, things that are associated with the president, and so you did one the last time. Haruna Idrisu, communications, as I say, communications minister, trade minister, says you are on a suicidal mission. You are selling out your future. That Ghanaians will punish you for that. And in fact, there are a lot of Ghanaians who are not happy about this.
But you see, let me deal with that quickly and then I conclude. You see, in 2007, Haruna Idrisu, John Mahama, they walked out on President Kufuor's State of the Nation address. And yet, so they won elections.
What was the basis?
One second.
What was the basis?
Oh, but we all know the basis.
Yes, they were working out because they said one of their own had been incarcerated and they think it was unjustifiably done.
So,
as we speak, they are talking about different situations here.
So
they're saying you are still in court. The court is yet to pronounce on your petition. So what's it?
When they walked out, there was an appeal pending. But you see, after walking out, they still won the elections in 2008. So indeed, if we are to go by their record, walking out can indeed be beneficial. Haruna Idrisu should go and check his notes. He and John Mahama, they walked out on Kufuor. You see,
the charge is that you are approbating and reprobating because you are using a portion of the Constitution that empowers you to go to court to challenge the elections, but you are not respecting the other portion of the Constitution that says until determined otherwise by the Supreme Court, the president is president.
But nobody has said he's not president.
Everything he does without prejudice.
Well, nobody has said he's not president. Did we stop him from delivering the State of the Nation address? We did not. We didn't block the Parliament House. We didn't picket the floor of Parliament. We allowed him to exercise his functions. We didn't block him. So really, that is not an issue at all. But you see, something to conclude. The president talked about agriculture, modernizing agriculture. What did he talk about? That we'll do more seeds, we'll do more tractors, we'll do fertilizer. Which government doesn't do more seeds, more fertilizer? Look at what he said about housing. A lot of English words and phrases put together. You don't see the direction. The massive STS failure, the nearly 5,000 flats that have in 60, 70% completion that are rotting, getting rotten. No address of those issues. You just came and put together a lot of words. Same for water. The current crisis that we have in water was not even addressed. He just came and put a lot of words together in water. Mining, which really got me, that is going to rigidly enforce laws on illegal evasion by foreigners. Vice president for 4 years, president for nearly 6 months, 7 months. You have now realized that you have to rigidly enforce laws on illegal mining, but that's what that he offered us.
They would ask you, and perhaps legitimately, that in 8 years you didn't do that.
He said that on corruption, he would implement the Freedom of Information Act when it is passed. But if the act is passed, you must implement it. So why are you telling us? The problem is getting it passed. They've made promises upon promises, deadlines upon deadlines. They will pass the act. It has not been passed.
But the president has the power of accent. He can decide not to.
But you brought it. Now, when it is passed, you said you implement it. Why? And you are telling us this. You look at governance, and this is my last point. Governance.
30 seconds,
brother,
sincerely.
The average Ghanaian governance, the delivery of public services, it's so difficult. You want a passport. You go to the passport office, it's like a market.
You're saying things have changed.
Sorry?
Things have changed.
No, nothing has changed.
From better to worse. Is that what it is?
Absolutely. This is the situation that confronts the average Ghanaian every day. You want a building permit, my brother. It's like an obstacle course. You want a driver's license. It's an obstacle course. You don't see Goro boys, you don't get license.
And all of these were not like that when the NPP was in power.
No. These are the issues that confront the Ghanaian. They haven't been addressed.
All right, thank you very much, Nana Akomia. And Felix, if you may, I would wish that we'll shift the gear into the other aspects of the arguments. There is a big argument about the walkout, and the NDC, like I did say, Haruna Idrisu projects what is the NDC's thinking, that this is suicidal. What they are doing is disregard to the laws of this country. But there are those who are saying that you do not have the moral justification, so to speak.
Well, Samson, before I address that, it is important that I respond to some of the issues raised by Nana Akomia.
Briefly.
I mean, he spoke about the economy in terms that suggest.
Kindly speak up a bit for me.
Well, he spoke about the economy in terms that suggests that the economic situation today is worse than it was, say, 4 years ago. But everybody who's been in Ghana knows that that is absolutely unfounded. I have always maintained that if you want to assess an economy's performance, there are specific laid-down indices. That is what you go for. There is not a single economic index today that is worse than it was in 2008, when Nana Akomia and his government had been in power for a total of 8 years. If you look at our growth rates, yes, in 2011, we achieved one of the highest growth rates of 14.4%. It is true that oil contributed about half of it. But I'm telling you that a growth rate for the real sector of 7% and above is phenomenal. All the countries that call themselves middle-income countries, the Asian tigers, China, and what have you, have grown at that rate consistently. And they are where they are today because of that consistency. Oh, please. But that was not the only growth rate. That was not the. Oh, please, Nana Akomia. When you were speaking, I kept quiet. There were times in your government, Ghana grew by 5%, and you were proud of it. You thumped your chest and offered it as proof positive that you were doing something good. I am saying, and it's a statement of fact. You can find out from any economist that a growth rate of 7% for the real sector is fantastic. If you maintain that pace, you are going to reach middle-income status in a couple of decades. So when you seek to create the impression that the only thing that has contributed to our growth is oil, it is most unfortunate. In any event, who says that when you have oil, it should not contribute to your economy? The investments that you make, the decisions that you make in terms of managing the oil revenue all go a long way to contribute, even in some instances, to the growth of the real sector. Because you can choose actually to invest oil money in agriculture, as is the case in the Petroleum Revenue Management Bill, which directs that money from the oil sector should actually be pumped into the industrial, agricultural, and educational sectors to enhance the growth of those sectors as well. So Nana Akomia's attempt to rubbish our growth rate is, for me, most unfortunate. Again, the impression that he creates that necessarily you cannot grow a single digit if your interest rates are higher is, for me, again unfounded, because there is precedent. In Japan, in the late 80s to the mid-90s to the early 2000s.
So you cannot grow a single digit.
Please. Sorry, you cannot have a single digit inflationary rate and have high good high.
I didn't say. I say you have inflation.
But I'm saying that that analogy that you make is not necessarily the case. You are referring to classic textbook economics. But in management of an economy, there are practical issues that you must confront. In Japan, for a period of about 15 years, they had what they call deflation. They actually suffered a situation where the price of goods and services actually kept dropping to the disadvantage of producers, manufacturers. But their interest rates did not remain at zero. What I'm saying is that this claim, and it is a claim that Dr. Bawumia makes a lot, that necessarily there must be a direct correlation between your inflationary rate and interest rate, is not entirely the case. And there are many, many examples across the world where that doesn't happen. So please, the textbook economics is enough. We need to do practical economic management. You look at our external reserves, for instance, and that provides you import cover. We inherited external reserves of just under $2 billion under the MPP. Currently, we have $5.5 billion. It is the highest we've had in our entire existence as a country. And Nana Akomia cannot.
External
please.
reserves are measured in terms of the import cover.
Yes.
What is the import cover?
Yeah, no, please.
What is the import
cover? It is
cover
not measured in terms of import cover. You look at, in any event, what was the import cover under the MPP? It was 1.8 months.
And what is the import cover?
Today, it is near 3 months. which is much better. It is actually
And
twice.
you've had oil revenue for 2 years.
Please, Nana Kumia.
You've
Please.
had
I think
oil
that, I think
revenue
that
for
I could
2
do.
years.
Okay.
Nana Kumia,
Nana,
I could
you've
do.
made a point. So
I
go
could
on.
do without the heckling.
Go on. And quickly,
Again, on the
quickly
energy
move on
situation,
to where
when
I'm
you want
seeking
to
direct
assess
you.
the country's ability to provide energy, what you look at is the demand. Our installed generation capacity, a little over 2,000, falls short of what we require. We require about 2,800. There are significant portions of our country that sleep in darkness. 40% almost of our citizens do not have access to electricity. So in actual fact, for us to get to middle income status, we need 5,000 megawatts of electricity. We have difficulties along the value chain, generation, transmission, distribution. That is why we have the frequent light-offs, the usual light-offs that we have, the power outages, which are unplanned. But in around August, September, we were confronted with an emergency situation where we suffered a major dip in generation capacity relating to the West African gas pipeline. That is what supplies Asogli.
200 megawatts.
That is what supplies the thermal plants at Abuadi. Once that generation capacity is knocked off, you are left with little that you need to share around for everybody. So necessarily, you are going to have to embark on a load. Oh, please. Please, I'm saying that, but Nana Kome, you are not listening to the argument I'm making. What is our demand? 2,200, is it enough to suffice? Does every Ghanaian get access to electricity because we have 2,200? Absolutely.
Yeah,
when
we're not having load shedding.
Oh, please.
At
Please.
2,200. So
yes,
when you
but
take only 200.
No, but you are going to have load shedding. Even if you took away 50 megawatts, you will still require, because mind you, you need what they call redundancy capacity. You need to have a reserve. You don't even use all that you have.
Some will say that doesn't demonstrate efficient management
No,
of the
again,
state.
check the record. Check the record.
Because if you are losing only 200
listen,
everything comes crumbling.
Something. You see, we are a developing country. These problems are a function of our status. As we progress, we'll be able to meet all our challenges. Currently, we have brought our capacity to 2,200. But what was it before the NDC came to power, for instance? What is the MPP's record, for instance, in terms of generation capacity? In fact, for 7 years, between 2001 and 2007, but for mining companies that provided us with some 80 megawatts of electricity generation capacity, the MPP did not add anything. It was subsequent, or it was prior to their leaving government. That is around 2006, 2007, in the wake of the energy crisis, that they brought in what Dr. Wekubobe refers to as the toy generators. And then work started on Bui, and then some other projects came on stream.
Felix, nonetheless, what there is to
Yes,
worry
but I'm
about
saying
is
that
the present. If you
something
live
if you
in a
allow me.
country where your president has sleepless nights because of electricity,
Yeah, but something,
you can't be
we have
happy about that.
No, the president is certainly not happy, and he demonstrated it, that he is deeply concerned about the situation. He showed that strenuous efforts have gone into addressing the difficulty. In fact, as of December, the engineers working on the West African gas pipeline have succeeded in dealing with the problem. Then another emergency occurred, which caused the lives of 2 engineers. So that set us back a bit. But he provided timelines in terms of what is going to be done in the shortest possible time. By the end of February, we are going to have 132 megawatts from the T3 project at Abuadi. The Bui Dam is expected to produce first power around the end of April. There's 2 megawatts that's coming from a solar project somewhere in Navrongo, which would all give us in excess of 250 megawatts, which would then enable us seal the hole that has emerged as a result of the knocking out of the West African gas pipeline. But we expect that work on the West African gas pipeline itself will be complete by the end of April, which will then give us additional capacity to be able to meet our generation needs. That is not the only work that is going on. There's work going on seriously on transmission lines. The president mentioned it. And other works related to distribution, which will then solve our problem. So it is not as if the government has relaxed and is doing nothing. And I think that these efforts must be appreciated. But
from the comments from the NDC and people in government, it sounds as if you can't be bothered. You don't really care that the NPP, minority boycotted the House.
Well, something, you see.
Or they walked out.
I am indifferent to the NPP's boycott. You must understand that it is not just the boycott that is raising eyebrows, because indeed parliamentary boycotts have become an established norm in our parliamentary democracy. In fact, we do well in Ghana. In other places, they come to fisticuffs. In the Italian parliament, there was an incident where people threw chairs at each other.
Just a while ago,
we have been
just a while ago, I was attempting a casual, recall of some of the boycotts by the NDC. And quickly, I remember the one over the Get Fund, the one over the ROPAL, the one over the National Health Insurance Scheme, the one when there was to delete the June 4 from the holidays, you know, of this country, E.T. Mensah, BNI arrest, then you had the Dana Budakwi one as well.
The issue is not that they have boycotted. It is the reasons informing the boycott that has raised eyebrows. First of all, you have a party that is approbating and reprobating at the same time. Somehow they feel that President Mahama will get legitimacy if they engage in some aspects of our governance processes. But there can be no greater mistake of judgment or delusion of achievement than that. The legitimacy of President Mahama stems directly from the mandate that he received from the people of Ghana on the 7th of December 2008. Constitutional processes were followed through. The Electoral Commission of Ghana is the only body that is seized with the power of declaring who won an election. And once the Electoral Commission has gone through those processes, President Mahama is the legitimate president of the Republic of Ghana. In a democratic dispensation, progress is made when both sides are able to engage and deliberate on issues of national concern and come to some consensus. It is all well and good. But when one faction decides that for their own narrow parochial interest, they are going to disengage from the process and in that regard proceed to take steps which disrespect the mandate that Ghanaians have conferred on the president, it is going to raise a sort of eyebrows.
Do you expect them to have sat in that parliament, the parliament, and listen to the president speak about smooth elections, acclaimed worldwide as very peaceful and very credible, and all of that?
We in the NDC have had opportunity to be served with the evidence that the MPP will. In fact, even before that, some evidence had been provided by Dr. Baumia. I mean, I can assure you that there's absolutely nothing in that evidence. And that this whole claim that the election was fraudulent is contrived. I'm unable to speak to the specifics because it is exactly, I'll refrain from doing that. But the point I'm making is that the contradiction in the MPP's position was inherent in an incident that happened yesterday in Parliament. The same people who claim that they do not recognize the president, they do not recognize his ministers, and so they are not going to take part in the processes that will help appoint or legitimize the persons the president has chosen as ministerial nominees, came to Parliament and sought to ask questions of the ministers that they say they do not recognize. That is an inherent contradiction. It is, in my view, a matter of great disrespect to the people of Ghana, some of whom actually voted for them to go and represent them in Parliament. Right. So, whereas the boycott will not deny or deprive President Mahama of legitimacy, it will only go to show the extent to which the MPP is committing suicide. And that is what the Honorable Harun Idrisu alluded to.
Let me share a few of the text messages that have come in with you, and then we'll hear from Abdul Malik Okubako to wrap up on this subject. Now, Stephen Saki writes, after waiting for some couple of weeks, I heaved a sigh of relief when I heard the voice of Abdul Malik in the studio. As much as I agree that he has his family duties to perform, I humbly appeal to him not to stay away from Newsfile for so long. Next time, if he travels without my knowledge, okay, he will only return to answer at the Supreme Court. Welcome, Kweku. That's a nice way to welcome you to the show. Kobi Amwa in Ayawa, USA, writes that for a commission that failed to provide names of 241,000 Ghanaians who registered abroad and instead showed 703 only, it is amazing how the president can congratulate them for an exceptional job. The president's State of the Nation address was a joke and more like a campaign talk. Okay, that's Kobe. Bonti Benjamin writes, the refusal of the president to tackle the actual problem confronting the nation now throws more weight behind the backwards ever, forward never direction this nation has been throughout the last 4 years. Ghana deserves better. John Sarkodie Ado writes from Germany, and he says the drama of politics in Ghana is that politicians promise to do everything for the people before elections, but retreat to appeal to the people to fend for themselves immediately after elections. Apia Kubi in Virginia, USA, writes, was our president reading his manifesto to us, or he was reading to us the State of the Nation? If the State of the Nation's address, then, if that's the State of the Nation, then can one of your panelists explain State of the Nation's address, since what I heard in my ears sounded like a manifesto? David writes, it is laughable for the president to say workers should not demand more wages because there is no money. How much is he getting at the end of the month? Yaro in Akotia writes, I was very impressed with President Mohammed's address of the State of the Nation. He touched on every aspect of the economy, especially the roads. I know he would deliver. I knew he would deliver. To the lawless NPP lawmakers, they will be judged by their conscience come 2016. Pascal writes from Nandom. The NDC and the president are confused. What he read was a speech written by, I'm sorry, I won't continue with your message. Aful Williams writes from Asantimampong Samson. Was the president delivering his campaign manifesto or State of the Nation address? Thank you for your messages. I will go to Abdul Malik Kwekubaku Jr. and look at the aspect of the walkout and the claims of contempt that is coming up because of what the president had to say about the elections.
Yes, I'll do that, but a very quick one, and maybe being fair. I took another look at the State of Nation Address 2012. That's February 16th. And I realized that with regards to the issue of investigations into the cocaine that became turned into Kokonte, the former president, Professor Mills, indeed said something about it subsequent to what he had said in 2010. And this is what he says: we have since, indeed, as I speak, the national security has in its custody a very key player in the case of the 77 parcels of supposedly missing cocaine. He was talking of the MV Benjamin, but that's clearly not what he had advocated earlier in terms of setting up a presidential commission. I have also received, and this is critical, a report from the BNI on the results of the investigations into the cocaine which got missing from the police votes. I intend to get to the bottom of this matter, and I will. What it means is that something was done to that effect.
And we are aware of one individual who was put before court.
No, that's different. This is different from that one. We are talking of the Kokonte. That is
Kokonte, not the 77. Okay.
Yeah, but the Tewoda case is different from Kokonte. The Kokonte happened under the NPP administration.
I get that.
But
the issue,
I thought one Dake.
Yes, but that is not what the president had advocated. The point I'm making is that where is the BNI report?
On which one?
On the Kokonte one. It's important that it's made public. That we are told about it. Okay, that is the point I was making. That if you've taken an initiative, if you initiated action, the results must be put out there. Yes, go on. Why not? Yeah.
Talking about the initiative, you said something about constituency offices for MPs.
Yeah.
I do know, and indeed you can verify, that some piloting began. If you go to Abeno constituency, which has now been split into Akachi South and some other constituency, I think that there's a house there built by the District Assembly, I believe, as a model for what could be done for MPs elsewhere. It can be argued that perhaps the rate of progress has not been that rapid, but there certainly has been some movement.
I would not accept that one.
Oh, but
obviously I wouldn't.
I would
not.
But you can verify.
It's a pilot.
An abandoned.
You mean you are going to do piloting? Before you know how to put constituency offices for MPs,
you need to try.
You don't need to do piloting in this. It's waste of money. What are we talking about?
I think that you've done a lot of propaganda.
Let's proceed.
So you've cleared that one. Now let's proceed. Let's proceed with the other aspects.
See, sometimes there's a certain element of double standards, hypocrisy, and dishonesty in our body politic, and it worries me. I've been listening to the NDCs, some of their leading members, their reactions, especially members of parliament, to the MPP posture on this matter. And I did some little research, and I realized that the boycott of parliament, it wasn't a walkout by the NDC in 2007. It was a boycott of parliament. That's an extension.
Yeah, it was for a period.
Yes, for a period.
From about 15 days or
yes,
so.
from
5 days.
5 days.
No. They boycotted on the 6th and returned on the 14th. But of course, I'm sure he's counting it by sittings, parliamentary sittings. So that's something to clarify. First of all, the decision to boycott was taken by the Functional Executive Committee of the NDC. And then the MPs were instructed to undertake that exercise. I've heard some NDC MPs saying that they don't understand why NPP MPs are taking instructions from the party, because this stand is supposed to have been crafted by the National Executive Council. What's the difference between what they did then and what is happening now in terms of the source of the authority to do that? The same. Indeed, Asiedu Nketia went public and said what they were doing was constitutional, and that the Constitution of 1992 stipulated that you ought not to be disloyal to your party, and that if you become disloyal to your party as an MP, you can be sacked by the party. He was suspected talking of cross-carpeting. And he used that as a basis to make this point and rationalize and justify. And indeed, listen to Mr. Bagben. First of all, Asiedu Nketia, he says, we should not be looking at the role of parliamentarians as only representing their constituencies, but the entire totality of Ghanaians. Mr. Bagben said the party was yet to take a decision on when to return to the House and ask Ghanaians not to allow mischief to poison the understanding of multi-party democracy. This was on the 14th of February, so they hadn't returned by then. And listen, quote, we don't operate independently from our party, he said, adding that the argument that the MPs who had been boycotting parliament should not be paid their salaries showed a gross level of ignorance. Same argument is being made today by the NDC MPs, that the MPP MPs should not be paid. But this was their stand. Mr. Bagben said no law prevented MPs from boycotting parliament, and that the party had the instrument of appeal, boycott, and demonstrations to ensure that justice was done. They are necessary in this particular situation. Look, if you think what you did then was wrong, and so what is happening now is wrong, proceed by first recanting what you did, showing remorse. Let everybody know that was wrong. We have legitimized boycotts and walkouts in our parliamentary practice. Indeed, in principle, it's undesirable. That's my candid opinion. And I've checked some authorities in terms of parliamentary history that under a strict constitutional democratic system, boycotts are not a desirable option. But we have legitimized it, and all sides have played to it. Now, what are the elements involved? There are similarities and dissimilarities. The NDC boycott of 2007 was based on the fact that a member of their party, a sitting member of parliament, had been convicted by a court of competent jurisdiction. They knew there was an option, as Bagben is saying, of an appeal. Under the laws of this land, the option of an appeal was there. But they ignored it and chose to leave parliament and go and do business outside parliament.
What do you know? At that time, had the option of appeal, had it been activated already?
No.
Because if it had not been activated, then they had the right so to do.
No, you are not getting the drift of my argument.
I get you.
The court convicted Dana Kudabi, I think 5th of February. 6th of February, the NDC held a press conference and announced their boycott. They knew that the option of appeal existed. That's the point I'm making.
It had not been activated.
Who was going to activate it? Not the man who's been jailed? Was it a party? No. It was the responsibility of the person who was at the end of justice to do that. But the party assumed control and said, in view of this, we are boycotting parliament, when they knew there was an appeal, a possibility of appeal. which indeed eventually happened. And you know, because he filed the appeal, he continued to remain in parliament, because that's what the law allows, and continued to take his salaries, even though he was in jail. The law allowed it. There was a lot of debate, but some of us went for the law and realized that it was legitimate. Until and unless he failed at the appeal, he still had to remain in parliament. What is the situation today? As I said, in my candid opinion, boycott as a weapon, I believe, is undesirable. It's legitimate, but it's undesirable. The NPP today stayed away from the inauguration of President Mahama.
That is so.
They've stayed away from the vetting of his appointees. They've stayed away from the State of Nation address. From day one, when the NPP announced the boycott of the inauguration, I said the problem they were going to have, and I think we will cure the mischief here, that they didn't come up with a clear-cut view on the limits and the scope of what this was going to be. Subsequently, bits started coming in, but it was scattered. Gradually, my understanding of what they were doing was that things that would expire with the presidency of Mahama, that's assuming, there's an if, and a big one, the Supreme Court rules.
Otherwise.
Yes, of course. So it's a, if we're only doing an intellectual discussion, if the declaration by the EC is invalidated by the EC, obviously that inauguration would have been just a matter of history. The ministers would go with the president, whether we like it or not. The State of Nation address that has been delivered now, there will be a new one by whoever is so declared. These are transient things. There's a thread of consistency there. You may disagree with them. You may say that boycott is undesirable, but at least there's a thread of consistency in that. And that's up to them.
You said it's undesirable, and that's the position that you support. But do you find that if we continue in this fashion, we're going to have an ungovernable state? Take, for example, if it happened that the Supreme Court invalidated the election of President Mahama, and then it happened that whatever it is, Nana Addo became the president. The majority in Parliament will remain the majority. If you don't have their cooperation, you can't do anything, really.
So we shouldn't test the law?
So if at this point you are in court and you will not cooperate with them lawfully, you don't expect that if it happened the other way,
I am saying
they'll cooperate with you.
We shouldn't test the law. Is that the option? That in view of the possibility of the NDC majority behaving in a certain manner, so if people have problems with an election, the integrity of an election declaration, they shouldn't go to court and test it?
No, they should be in court.
They should test it.
But they should remain in the house.
No, but that's why they've been selective. They've told you the things they won't deal with. You see, I made a point that you can agree or disagree with their position. But the truth is that it's consistent. Oh, it is.
No,
you can say it is. No, but that's the point. That's why I chose to use the word consistent.
If you are consistently wrong.
No, I'm coming. No.
There's a price you're going to pay for that.
No, it doesn't matter. You boycotted, NDC boycotted Parliament
it is
more
not,
than 7
It is
times.
not about boycott. I've stated here that the argument is not about boycott.
To the people.
It's not about
you won an
boycott.
election.
It's
So
about the principle underlying the boycott. It's not about the practice.
Let me make my point.
Okay, go ahead.
And please,
I am saying there's a thread of consistency there. You may disagree with them. You may find it disagreeable. And you are entitled to that opinion. But at least I see consistency in that.
I see.
In terms of the fact that those things are transient and those things will not stick if assuming the election results are invalidated. Is that true or not? That's a fact. So they have chosen to walk a certain tightrope. And that isn't they are entitled to do.
Right.
That's my view. It's not as if it's an endorsement. I am saying that if you do an analysis of what they are doing, clearly, but see, there's another catch. I've heard people say that, so can they then go to these ministers?
Finish on that point
yes,
briefly.
I'm going to finish. Can they go to these ministers and ask, lobby for funds or projects? Can they ask questions and things? The budget, would they discuss? You see, do a very critical analysis of the situation. The president, as elected, I at this stage accept him as the president. There's no doubt about it. I called to congratulate him even on that score. So make no mistake about my stand.
In fact, constitutionally, we do not have an option.
Yes, yes. So understand that we are having here a serious analysis of a phenomenon, which indeed has a certain characteristics that we hadn't seen before. It's an uncharted territory. Okay? And we are dealing with the issues here. Everybody must speak his mind the way he feels. I'm saying that the president is president of all Ghanaians. He's obliged to deliver goods and services to all Ghanaians, whether they voted for him or not. Those appointees of the president are not entitled to discriminate when it comes to delivery of services, goods and services. So if a minister, a member of parliament did not take part in your vetting, you are not enabled to proceed on that basis, not to deliver goods and services to a constituency.
Those MPs walking out and boycotting also are expected to represent all their constituents.
So we are raising the bar.
Those who voted and those who did not vote for them.
It may not even be in the interest of the president and his appointees if they were to sanction those constituents and deprive them of goods and services. It will have a backlash effect. So in real politics,
they
won't do. Thank you. But that's the point I am making. No, but that's the point I am making.
I agree.
That it will not happen. That's the point.
Of course, it will not.
And because it will not happen, I find it ridiculous that some people are raising that issue.
Okay.
Thank you.
They are raising moral arguments.
All right.
No,
thank you.
You are morally
Thank you. Thank you very much. This is the point where
the deficit in your moral argument, the deficit in that moral argument is what the answer has been provided here. And that was the point I was making.
Whether
can you allow
come
me?
to lobby or not,
Can you allow? But that's the point.
But as a member of parliament,
I think you
have you done justice? Have you done justice?
And in any case, the vehicle for development under this governance system, as we all know, in terms of our decentralization, unless we don't want it to work, are the district assemblies.
That is so.
And
Thank
local
you.
government. So that argument is based on a fallacy.
Thank you very much. This is where we take a quick break. But in 20 seconds, tell me, Nana, you had told Newsfile earlier that you were expecting about 30 plus of the other constituencies to contest the results. How many are you contesting now?
Oh, they've started filing the petitions. I
How
don't
many?
know how many now, but every day they file.
Every day they file.
I don't know the exact number now.
I wanted to be sure because
So far, we know of two.
No, it's more than two.
Name them.
Name the two.
I know of Asawabati. I know of North.
And then you also have
only those two you
Yeah,
know.
those are the two that I know. If you have hotels.
you also have the former Attorney General. Ikotu.
Oh, as if.
But how will you know? How will you know?
That means 3 out of 275. So let's
Okay.
go.
Thank you very much. We take a break here. We'll be right back.
Should I tell you more?
You're welcome back. This is Newsfile on your Joy News channel, on Multi TV, and also on Joy 99.7 FM on radio and across the country on various affiliate stations. And well, before we go to do the discussion about how expensive pink sheets have become and why granite sellers are hoarding them, let me tell you about this judgment debts matters. Now, the very latest one. I'll give you my own simple summary understanding of the process. The NIB, in January 2007, acting through its MD, Daniel Charles Jima, entered into a collateral management agreement with a company in Singapore for the promotion of agricultural projects in Ghana, quote unquote, promotion of agricultural projects in Ghana, to be implemented by another company known as Eland International, Ghana Limited. Eland issued 30 promissory notes worth $60 million. NIB's MD guaranteed the promissory notes to mature by January 2009. The promissory notes were later discounted by Eland through Iroko Securities, another company, limited of UK, to investors represented by the company now known as Dominion Corporate Trustees Limited. Proceeds of the discounted deal, that is $45 million plus, were paid to NIB via its international banking department in London in 2 installments in May and June 2007. The promissory notes on maturity attracted 11% interest per annum if Eland defaulted payment. Now, Eland defaulted. Dominion Corporate Trustees Limited was entitled to $60 million directly from NIB, the guarantor, without any recourse to Eland. NIB used up the $45 million that was paid into its account, but NIB insists that the MD, Charles Jima, acted without authority in guaranteeing those promissory notes worth $60 million. Now, NIB admits that the $45 million was paid to its international banking department, but without the knowledge and approval of its board, and that the then managing director put the cash in an escrow account in the name of Eland and later disbursed the monies. Now, I have read the entire judgment, and you find some things really very curious. And when the disbursing was being done, it was disbursed to people in Eland and others, including a gentleman by name Stephen Jima. Now, my instructive summary, this is virtually my instructive summary of the whole story. And we want to discuss, in addition to that, the 51 million judgment debts that citizen vigilante Martin Amidu shows, has been doing about and has been able to show to the Supreme Court that Austro Invest, which sought to benefit from the cash, is now a ghost entity, or should I say non-entity. He is questioning the commitment of the current Attorney General, Marietta Brew Apia Opong's commitment to retrieve the money for the state because her law firm represented Austro Invest. Gentlemen, I don't know. The bigger issue that is coming up, which I want us to deal with, is whether government wants to continue to have business doing business. I want to know from you, Dr. Sule Garba, how do you, first of all, appreciate the development so far, as far as the NIB matter is concerned, and we come to look at the little bit about the Woyome matter before the Supreme Court?
Well, thank you very much. On both issues, let me be quite candid. My knowledge about the intricacies of these transactions is not only limited, it's also, even whatever I have to say about it will be, should be structured in such a way that it is not prejudicial of ongoing court transactions. But as I listened to your candid summary of the NIB issue, I was amazed at the complications, the systems that had been set up, convoluted in such a manner that it is clear to any ordinary Ghanaian that the structures had been set already to delude, to defraud the state. NIB board did not make the approval, which is the supreme governing body of the bank. To my understanding, whatever was approved did not go anywhere near these humongous amounts because NIB at the time could not have been exposed to a liability upwards of 1.5 million and now 60 million. 30 promissory notes were issued, supposedly guaranteed by the MD himself, but not the board. So how could all of these transactions, and as it turns out, who is behind Erland? It has conflicting family interests. So in the final analysis, what government at this stage is focused upon is to say these things that eventually cause us judgment debts are a series of fraudulent arrangements which sometimes, in all times, bypass legitimate procurement processes, constitutionally mandated bodies that are accountable, and that when they bypass them and public officials end up signing as an MD personally guaranteeing, then we have a problem. And in view of that, the president, as at October last year, had set up a sole commissioner to look into the intricacies of this. And this is not partisan. This is to go back in time and say, in the blind side of government, whether it's MPP government or NDC government, public officials do things which eventually come home to roost.
I'll tell you one reason why the courts did not agree with the attempt by the NIB to suggest that it had no knowledge, it did not approve, and it didn't have, the MD did not have its blessing. If the MD did not have your blessing, when the monies were paid into the bank's international department, banking department in the UK, an official of the bank also testified in court of she being aware, an official who is the head of that department, of she being aware of those monies, $45 million US, being paid into the account and being disbursed subsequently.
But Samson, you yourself
and being disbursed
summary,
subsequently. And just hear this. The judge says that the scenario that emerges is one which has to do more with an inept corporate management of the NIB's affairs, which should not be a pretext for the NIB to avoid its obligations under the contract.
Indeed, listen, you yourself in your summary said when it was paid, it was escrowed and then disbursed without the board's approval. But that's this, as I said, I'm not an expert in
that's
this. So
the claim in defense.
Yes, but
in the NIB's attempt to take away its to absolve itself of responsibility and leave it only to the MD as having acted independently.
I don't know the intricacies of it. And the NIB clearly is at liberty under the law to appeal these judgments. Mind you, the ruling against NIB then was at a time when the prosecution was trying to argue that the MD was engaged in financial loss to the state. At that time, they hadn't paid out anything. Now that a judgment debt in respect of all of these has come and NIB has to comply, they will have to appeal. So I don't want to delve into the details. What I want to delve into the details of is the conditions that create judgment debt. Governments in this country have been boxed into judgment debt at a time when they were either not aware or it didn't happen at their time. But the system, whatever government does, whether it's MPP government or NDC government, we all have to accept responsibility. And in doing so, the sole commissioner is being put in place to unravel in a non-partisan manner some of the machinations which lead to judgment debt. And what the president is committed to is to follow through with the letter of the report of the sole commissioner.
And what do presidents or leaders of the economy do when matters of this nature come up? When a board tells you that, look, I didn't bless it, I didn't give approval, and yet it becomes evident in court that for the period there is evidence to show that monies have come in and have been used up with other, officers of the bank knowing about
but
all
that's
of this.
precisely the point, Samson, that you've been making all the time. The corporate governance institution can show without any shred of doubt that it did not approve. The Bank of Ghana.
So what do you do to those leaders?
The Bank of Ghana's own internal oversight rule monthly monitors this. It never shows up. The internal audit of the bank itself monitors and reports. It never shows up. So board did not approve. Bank of Ghana's external oversight did not unearth it. Internal audit did not. So clearly somebody had systematically shielded all of those documents from the public view of the board, of the Bank of Ghana, even of internal audit.
Okay.
So those are the things
just
that
hold
need
on
to be
briefly.
plugged out.
Just hold on briefly, and I'll come to Kweku Bako. The argument that Dr. Sule Gariba makes, how does that, do you sustain that argument of the board's, you know, of the board's innocence, as it were, or of the board's lack of knowledge of these processes, when there is evidence to show that there had been a previous transaction also over and above the ability or the threshold allowed by law and the banking rules of the MD, and the MD made similar approvals, and the board was aware, and the laws provide for sanctions, and those sanctions were not activated. When the courts gets to be aware of all of this, and there's a second, you know, situation that happens, how do you reconcile this?
Well, I'm not about to make a statement on this matter. I'm sure I'm going to disappoint you. I'm totally ignorant of the issues at stake here. And I haven't even had the benefit of reading the court judgment.
I had it very late and decided to read all of it.
Should have said it.
But I was also in court. It was late. It was very late. And I was also in court when the judgment was read.
Yes,
so
so
I had
you
that
have a benefit of it. And I don't want to, you know, display my ignorance. I just don't know much about this. I need to study it before I can make a serious comment.
Okay.
This is a serious disappointment, I suspect.
Well, but something.
But we will come back to the other aspect,
Sure.
Austro Invest.
That's right.
Well, thanks, Samson. I think that, like my other panelists have indicated, information about this is scanty, at least for now. Maybe subsequently we can dig further into it and unearth some particulars that may inform analysis subsequently. But I think that the letter that you read goes to show that indeed those of us who have argued that in the whole judgment debt debate, we ought not to start from where the amounts were paid out, but how the debts came to be incurred. I think that from what you read, that is the angle from which we should proceed. And that indeed demonstrates the wisdom in the president's decision to set up a sole commissioner to dig deep into this judgment debt matter. Because look, for propaganda purposes, it may be expedient to use it to hit one political party or the other. But there is a deeper problem that goes to the very heart of our governance and management processes. If established institutions like Dr. Gaba enumerated can be bypassed for a transaction like this to take place, then it means that there's a serious lapse somewhere that we need to plug. But we can only unearth that lapse if we allow for proper, credible investigation, devoid of partisan politicking. That, for me, is the only way that we can address this particular issue. So let us not be quick to politicize these things.
Okay,
but let us
briefly,
look
we are joined on the line by Dr.
issues.
Dominic Ayine.
Yeah, right.
Dr. Dominic Ayine is counsel for the defendants in this matter who lost. Doc, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Samson.
Okay. So tell us, how did we come to this end? That the state, which is the major shareholder, is now saddled with over $90 million to pay.
I'm sure you both don't want to run away from the fact that the state is not saddled with this debt, technically.
The state is the major
I just wanted to clarify
shareholder.
a number of issues that were raised during the course of the discussion. One was your statement that NIB used up the funds. Now, something, as a lawyer, if you go beyond the judgment to the evidence that was submitted by both parties or all the parties, particularly the evidence that we submitted, the documentary evidence, which was glossed over for some reason by Justice Tanku, you will realize that the disbursements were on the oral instructions of Ms. Charles Daniel Jima, that this was an off-balance sheet transaction, and he instructed Ms. Juliet Osei Boachi to disburse the funds to certain entities. Now, curiously, the transaction advisor, Iruko Securities, was given $24 million of this money. There was also a related company to Iruko Securities called Sphinx Capital Markets USA. The last time I checked, it was a liquidated company in the US that also got $15 million of the money. There was also a Dubai offshore company. I am at home now. I don't have the documents, so I can't remember the name of that company very well. That company, a free zones enterprise in Dubai, also got $2.5 million. Now, the managing director of, it got 2.5 million, not 25. The managing director of Elan International, the customer of NIB that actually issued the promissory notes, also got $500,000 of the money.
Okay.
And then, of course, Jima's son himself got a ticket bought for him, and that was very insignificant. I think it was about $1,000. Okay.
Now, you are referring to Stephen Jima.
Stephen Jima.
Jima got, if you can respond briefly to this question. The questions that came up for you to answer in court is that a company certainly, has people like the MDs who operate.
No, but it's important. Something.
I needed to clear.
I know where you are coming from, and I will answer that question.
Okay.
It's important for us to clarify this issue because, as you rightly mentioned, they claimed in court that there was a 2001 collateral management agreement, pursuant to which the promissory notes were executed or the promissory note transaction was put in place in order to fund certain agricultural projects in Ghana. Now, from the disbursement that I have just outlined, where was the funding of agricultural projects in Ghana?
Okay.
Iruko Securities, being the transaction advisor, turns around and takes $24 million. Its related company takes $15 million. And then people are telling me that there is no fraud in this.
Okay, so now hold on. You had in exhibits, you had about 11 different exhibits.
Yes.
That showed 2 Dominion trusts. Let's use it that way.
Dominion corporate trustees.
Dominion corporate trustees. That the bank had given its blessing.
No.
To the entire transaction.
Not at all. That is the wrong impression that is being created. If you are referring to the exhibits, of a Dominion corporate trustee that Justice Tanko listed in his, judgment. All right. Those exhibits. What did he say in his judgment? He said he was going to evaluate the evidence. And with all due respect to him, he did not tell us what was the probative value of each of the exhibits. And I'll give one example. I refused to come onto the program because, the board had told me not to, but I need to correct the misimpressions that are being given. I have just spoken to the managing director, though. The exhibits, I'll just give one example. The certificate of incumbency.
Yeah, most importantly.
The certificate of incumbency is a document that testifies to a person's authority to execute a transaction. Now, if I want to find out from Joy FM, whether you, Samson Ladi Ayenini, whether you have the authority to host this program, you've been authorized by Joy FM to host this program, do I ask you to execute a certificate of incumbency telling me that I've got that authority? That will be a self-serving document. If you are dealing, what happened, if you are
dealing with the managing director,
of course.
If you are dealing with the managing director, who gives you a confirmation letter on behalf of the bank.
Don't sidetrack me because you see this is very important.
No, I thought that it was also important because the other party too is not available here.
Let me finish. I'm saying
the other party is not available here. And so I thought it was important to take you through point by point.
When I'm giving an example of one document and you start telling me about another document, it doesn't.
I told you of 11 separate documents that go to suggest.
Since you are the one to ask
that go to suggest that the managing director is acting with due authority of the board to do the business that he did.
Yes.
and then you subsequently come to court
Yes.
to seek to impeach his actions
Yes.
against a an innocent third party
Yes.
who came in and sunk in so much money and
Yes.
wants to take his money back.
Yes. So what is your question?
The point is that how do you show that you effectively, for example, rebut the presumption that the innocent third party?
If you look, if you remember your company law very well, I mean, Section 193 of the Companies Code establishes the presumption of regularity in the performance of the duties of a managing director. That presumption is not irrebuttable. It is a rebuttable presumption in the sense that if you can show that the person dealing with the managing director had actual knowledge, that is, he knew, or that he had constructive knowledge, that is, he ought reasonably to have known that the person lacked authority, then he cannot take advantage of that presumption.
And did you? And are you saying that you were able to show this?
Yes, we were, and I'll tell you how we did it. Under cross-examination, their second, this witness, Guy Isome, who was then a managing director of Iruko Securities. I cross-examined him extensively on the past dealings that they had with NIB. On smaller sums, they obtained board approval. All right. So it is serious. $60 million. They pretended that they were just dealing with Jima alone. And by the way, there was an email that he wrote to Mr. Setasanti of Essential Letter and Ankoma, complaining that Jima had delayed in obtaining board approval for this transaction. Somehow or another, the email fell into the hands of Tony Leta, who represented Elan in Ghana Limited in court. And when Tony Leta wanted to tender the email through him, Justice Tanko overruled him on the basis that the email had not formed part of the documents of Tony Leta when we were doing discovery. So he was going to ambush the gentleman.
Okay.
Now the question is, how can you ambush somebody who has authored a document? How can you surprise somebody who is the author of the document?
Tell me
the man
this.
didn't say that he didn't author the email.
Tell me this.
Yes.
The evidence of previous violation of the MD's mandate
Yes.
in the execution of a similar contract
Yes.
with is it Eland?
No, I'm not aware of that.
Which ought to have been punished.
Yes.
Why
You see,
why was it not
Dr. Garba
punished?
said,
Why was it not punished?
No. You see, as Dr. Garba said, these are, clear issues of corporate governance that we need to deal with as a country. What is the extent of board oversight over managers of these state-owned entities? We need to begin to address the issue. Because, you see, the man was law unto himself at NIB. I regret to say the back from my interaction with staff and so on.
All right, Dr.
Law
Ine.
unto himself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dr. Ine.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah,
I'm here.
I suppose we need a platform to specifically interrogate this matter in its entirety. But in the end, you have indicated that you are going to appeal.
Certainly, yes.
We are going to publish the judgment for our members of the public to also read.
Good.
Yes,
and I would
yes.
crave your indulgence to give you our written submissions. They are only 57 pages only.
Okay.
You can also publish them alongside the judgment so that people can see the difference.
Your written submission. It is critical to note. It is critical to note one thing about your written submissions.
Yes.
When in your written submission, you sought to single out the MD for an act of forgery.
Yes.
When you didn't plead those matters and deal with them, you know that by the rules you couldn't have done so.
No, I'm coming. Something.
Yes.
You see, you will come to learn. You see, law is like carpentry. You hold a saw, you cut the wood for a long time. You will come to learn how to hold a saw very efficiently.
I thought this is plain enough on the law by my reading.
It's not at all. Not at all. You see, that was a narrow definition of forgery that he adopted.
Okay. All right. Sorry. Let's see what the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeal will say about that. My production is saying we certainly need a separate time to do a thorough job with this particular subject. So thank you very much, Doc.
No problem.
Thank you very much for your time, Dr. Ayine, with that intervention on that matter. Nana, maybe I should come to you finally if you want to do briefly on this so that we move on to what we have the rest. Did you?
Yeah,
No, I have not brought. I didn't bring him in on this matter yet. From you
Sorry
to
about that.
Kweku
Sorry
to
about
Felix.
that. Sorry
Hassan
about that.
coming
Sorry
to
about
him.
Hi, Felix.
Oh, sorry. It was not the
But, you know, Samson, let me take 2 seconds to clear something that Felix. He was saying that what contribution has the NPP made to electricity generation?
Nana,
Felix,
can we move on?
Felix
Can we
is
move on?
absolutely important that I deal with.
6 years.
Now, for 6 years. But we were in power. Hold on.
For 8 years.
We were in power for 8 years.
Yes.
Now, Samson, when you are building an electrical generation plant, from conception to completion, it takes 4 years, 5 years. These people are saying that they are going to have 376 megawatts of electricity. Those 376 megawatts from Asogli, which has 200, Tema 1, which has 126, and Tema 250. All of these 3 projects were started in the NPP.
At this point has been made over and again
yeah,
on this platform.
But anyway, it's okay. It's okay.
When Felix was going on, he didn't tell you.
No, we can stop here and move on. It's been made on this platform so many times.
But when Felix was going on about what we have done, you didn't tell him.
Okay, so we've taken
notice of that. And the BUI, which is the largest investment in energy production since Kwame Nkrumah, is also NPP. So don't go anywhere and say that.
Okay,
what
Felix, please, we need to move on. We need to move on.
Now,
if you have the capacity to comment on this briefly, and then we'll move on. Yeah.
You've like my fellow panelists have said, we don't seem to have much knowledge about it. But there are strands that I could capture from the various conversations that you've been having. What are we talking about? We're talking about transparency, accountability, law, and justice. If officials entrusted with public duty have acted in a manner that causes the public to lose funds and it goes against the law should take its course. And this matter that we're talking about, NIB and so on, it seems to me that the law is taking its course. And that is how it should be. Whether somebody was supposed to have a mandate and he didn't have it, or somebody was supposed to buy something and didn't buy it on time, or whatever, the law is taking its course. So on that basis, I am disappointed when it comes to the other matter, the Woyome matter that Mr. Amidu is talking about. Here, you have a case where it doesn't seem like the law is being allowed to take its course.
How exactly do you mean?
But Samson, you have a situation where Mr. Woyome is paid a large amount of money. We are told that President Mills himself stopped it.
Let me focus it properly. The point for discussion for this moment is that Martin Amidu, feels that the current AG will not have the commitment towards prosecuting this matter because she used to Austro Invest. Yes, her law firm used to represent Austro Invest, which sought to benefit from the 51 million judgment debt. That is the question for now. And the court has also found, according to Woyome, according to Martin Amidu, that Austro Invest is a ghost company for now. It was liquidated sometime in 2011 or so. And so they've been struck out of the case. So the question now is Martin Amidu fair in seeking to indict the current Attorney General in this matter?
So we are talking about law enforcement and letting the law work. Martin Amidu believes that the law may not be allowed to work because of conflict of interest. And that is the same point that I'm developing. Exactly the same point. So I'm saying to you that you have a situation with the Woyome where all of these monies are paid to Mr. Woyome against the president's directive, against the court's directive. Everybody goes to sleep. The matter comes to light through an Auditor General's report. And everybody is saying, oh, what a major malfeasance. We must go to court. So government goes to court to compel or to order Woyome to pay back the money. Since that happened, forget about the president as ordering that the money should not be paid. Forget about the courts of Ghana ordering that the money should be paid. People still went ahead and processed documents to pay the money. Then it was discovered we go to court. Since they went back to court, under the Attorney General, no less, under the Attorney General, 8 times, the government of Ghana has even been fined by the courts of Ghana 500 cedis for not showing interest in the case. And they, of course, the very next day, they managed to appeal against that 500 cedis cost. Even Woyome is now telling the government of Ghana which witnesses to call. So, clear case of the law, justice, transparency being thwarted. And that is the point that I'm making.
Okay, Felix.
Well, Samson, thank you very much. Well, I do know that the Woyome affair provides Nana and his colleagues in the MPP some propaganda opportunity. But like I intimated, it is important that we get to the bottom of the matters rather than seek to profit. Propaganda. Again, I think that Mr. Amidu's criticism of the Attorney General is a bit... propaganda? Oh, please. Oh, I'm not saying such a thing. I think that his criticism of the Attorney General is a bit unfair. I mean, the Attorney General has been in office for barely a week. She's not taking any step on this Woyome matter. And yet, she is confronted with an allegation that she would not show commitment because her law firm at some point, representing Austro Invest, who Mr. Martin Amidu himself has admitted, has been struck off the case. So Austro Invest is not involved in the case any longer. Again, I don't believe that we can say that.
No, he wants you to look beyond that.
No.
The fact that the firm represented Austro Invest, and the fact that he's been struck out now, does not really change matters much.
No, but Samson,
because certain interests,
that argument
would be there. That's what he's saying.
That argument cannot be sustained. If it were to be upheld, what it would mean is that nobody can be appointed Attorney General in Ghana, because that position requires a technical person, i.e., a lawyer. That person would certainly have worked for a law firm in Ghana, which may have dealt with cases involving Ghanaians. So if any Ghanaian who has had a dealing with any law firm that produces an Attorney General goes to court, then that Attorney General cannot function. I don't think that we can sustain such an argument. But the point that I want to make finally is that the Attorney General's law firm, Lita Brew & Co., have about 4 clients who they are representing against Mr. Woyome. That is the information that I have picked up. 4 clients who have various cases against Mr. Woyome are being represented by the Attorney General's former law firm. So if there's anybody who Mr. Woyome has to fear, then it would be this Attorney General. So I don't think that the criticism is fair. And in this discussion, we must at all times refrain from impugning people's integrity where there's absolutely no basis for it.
You think in this matter there's absolutely
no basis. Otherwise, we can never have an Attorney General in Ghana.
I see. What's your view on this?
Well, with regards to the point Martin is making relative to the AG, I think it's a matter of potential conflict of interest. Potential, the operative word. But I remember, maybe I'm wrong, but I remember Martin in the same submission, and it was on your station that I heard, saying that she could still rise above that situation and do the job in a professional manner. Am I right? I had Martin say so, and which was a recognition of the fact that in spite of her previous association with the Lita, yes, she could still do the work as an AG. So it's a test of integrity. So really, I wouldn't lay too much emphasis on that side. It's a potential case, and I can't judge the AG on basis of the possibility, the potential, the perception. I'm not prepared to do that kind of judgment. Okay. But please, there's something more critical in all this matter, and it's worrying me. This Austro Invest guy, this company, it belongs to one guy called Ray Smith and his wife, who was the consul, the Austrian consul in Ghana here, in charge of the Austrian consulate here. They are the same people who own Power Park. Now, I've been reading this gentleman. You are telling us the graphic says the Austro Invest was liquidated 26th July 2011.
Yeah.
On 19 December 2011, some 6-7 months later, this Ray Smith, writing under the letterhead of Empower Pack, he addressed a letter to the former president, President Mills, December 19, 2011, the matter of Alfred Agbesi Woyome. It's a short one, I'll read it. I am aware, Your Excellency, I am aware of the turmoil which the above is generating nationally in the media and which disturbs me greatly. Over the years, I've had a close relationship with the person, that's Woyome, and I wish to make known to you the facts surrounding this matter, since there's so much speculation and untruth being released in the public domain, which is far from the best interest of your government. I wish to present to you a factual report for your consideration. It would appear to me that a gentleman is generating unnecessary havoc and is more interested in his own misguided political ambitions than working truly in the best interest of his party. This is very strictly a personal view. I hope the attached document will be of some assistance to your investigation. Now, the attached documents show that Austro Invest entered into an agreement with Woyome. This whole thing is fraud from day one. Waterville had a similar agreement with Woyome. Austro Invest had a similar agreement with Woyome.
Yeah.
All claiming to be those doing the financial engineering.
So.
Okay? And this man writes a letter 6 months later after his Austro Invest
Has been liquidated.
has been liquidated. He now comes under the cover of Empower Pack, which can be found in the tendering processes in the beginning.
That is so.
Austro Invest, complete absence. You don't see it anywhere except the agreement that he and Woyome claimed they had signed 1st September 2005. Can you believe that? And they had an agreement themselves. I mean, there is something from day one about Austro Invest. For that matter, this Ray Smith, I think himself is part of the problem.
I see.
Yeah,
Yes, Dr. Sule.
Yeah, Samson, this is fascinating education, and I would hope that this kind of evidence will be tendered as well to the sole commissioner. Because as a nation, look, as I sit here, I'm a member of one board, and there are several of my type who have been approached several times with the most ridiculous transactions. The people who come forward with them, you look at them and say, is this guy serious? Look at the way he's dressed. He's saying he wants to assist us to get 200 million as an intermediary and so on and so forth. Public officials have to be educated to beware of this latter-day 419.
Okay.
And I think that this kind of evidence, that's why the president has called for a dispassionate national discussion about this. I mean, I'm amazed.
Okay.
The best rendition around Woyome has come from Nana today. The extent to which, he has underlined, a situation where the president protested and yet it was paid, where due process was not followed, and now the government is in court to retrieve it. This is the kind of national spirit that we must all develop.
But he's worried about how the government intends to retrieve it.
Yes,
he's
the
very
way
worried
the
about
prosecution,
that.
but also the cost. And I think
okay.
that a higher level of commitment needs to be exercised. And as for the AG, you can tell that her commitment lies in what the president has overwhelmingly stressed, that we will retrieve these
Let's take
resources.
the very little time we have to attempt some very quick commentary at the pink sheet, brouhaha, and if any implications for the ongoing matter and at the Supreme Court. Nana Kumia, you say this is an act of God, that the pink sheets were found with wherever in the northern region, and that the intention was to do what?
Yes, thank you, Samson. One of the planks of the NPP's petition against the Electoral Commission, and for which we are seeking reliefs, is that there were 1,825 unsigned declaration forms. The declaration forms are what we call the pink sheets. Now, it is very strange that declaration forms that contain all the information, including the results, will not be signed by the electoral officers in charge. So this is one of the grounds of the petition that we have made to the courts. Now, we have also made to the courts that there have been duplicate pink sheets. And that seems to offer some explanation as to why those pink sheets were not signed. That the duplicate pink sheets could have been substituted for the original ones. So those matters are in court. The Electoral Commission, in its response to this particular plank of the petition, denied that there were pink sheets or declaration forms that had not been signed. That as far as it was concerned, all the declaration forms had been signed.
So these are the unsigned pink sheets that these 3 electoral officers were trying to, work on in Savlugu and were arrested.
Yeah. So the Electoral Commission has said that every pink sheet has been signed in its response. So when we found out that Electoral Commission officials were now getting people to come and sign pink sheets, we believe that this is God's own intervention in uncovering this plot. Because we have stated that the pink sheets have not been signed and that a part of a system of duplicate pink sheets. And we've presented all of that evidence to the
And
courts.
you have your copies of these unsigned pink
The Electoral
sheets.
Commission in this response said that their copies have been signed. And if ours have not been signed, it could be that because the copies are about 8 and the person signing must really press down the pen. If the person didn't press down the pen, it could not get to all the carbon duplicate copies. But then it turns out that indeed, even the Electoral Commission's own copies have not been signed. And so they are now getting people to come and sign.
What impact is this supposed to have on the case? As far
It
as you know?
strengthens this particular plank of the NPP's case, because we have said that there are pink sheets that have not been signed. The Electoral Commission is saying all the pink sheets have been signed. So if it turns out that Electoral Commission officials are now engaged in the business of signing pink sheets, it totally validates this particular plank of our case.
I have had cause to say that this whole hoopla
Of the unsigned pink
about
sheets.
electoral fraud by the MPP is nothing more than an elaborate ruse devised
So why
by
is the Electoral Commission signing pink
Nana
sheets now?
Kumia and his colleagues to hide the fact that they let down their party members badly. You know, the truth of the matter is that if you listen to the MPP carefully from the beginning of this whole controversy, you find that there has been a very sustained effort to undermine the integrity of the Electoral Commission for the sole purpose of demonstrating that the Electoral Commission was in some collusion with President Mahama and, to that extent, the NDC to rig this election. And they have been found wanting when it comes to real concrete evidence. And therefore, every now and then, they orchestrate something just to give credence to their own distortions.
So you share the position of Johnson Essiedu Nketia that this was a ploy. NDC is doing, NPP is doing this.
What wisdom is there in the Electoral Commission going to sign pink sheets after the fact when all political parties have copies of the same pink sheet? What it would actually mean is that the EC would expose itself in court, because if it has the only pink sheets that are signed and 8 political parties have unsigned pink sheets, it will be easy to find them or to fish them out. It is an MPP plot by all means. The same MPP plot which managed to orchestrate rumors that Dr. Afarijan had attempted to flee this country and he had been arrested in Canada. Only last week, I got a call that rumors are making the rounds. Yeah, but that is the problem that you have. You go to court and say an entirely different, give an entirely different rendition. You go and say there were irregularities when you go to court. When you come to the public domain, you stand on platforms and call the president of this republic a thief because he has rigged elections. You speak about electoral fraud outside. And yet when you go to court, you speak about irregularities. So why that double speak? Why that lack of consistency? In fact, go and check the first allegation that the MPP made. Around 9th December, I think the Sunday on which the results were declared. Mr. Jake Obechebilamte stood in the full glare of your cameras. You captured it live and stated that in some constituencies, he mentioned places like Lejukuku, Ekropo, and what have you, votes had been added to the votes that President Mahama obtained, and votes have been subtracted from the votes that Nana Akufo-Addo obtained. These turned out to be false because it is actually not reflected in the evidence that they have provided before the courts. So I think that Ghanaians must disabuse their mind of this NPP propaganda.
Okay,
they should have confidence in the courts that they themselves have besieged to do justice to this issue.
I must take this break before Kukubaku speaks.
All right.
All right. You're welcome back. Thank you very much. You've got about some 3-4 minutes to get out of the studio. Straight away to Abdul Malik Kukubaku.
Really, really unfair to all of us in terms of the time. Talking about irregularities and fraud and how they affect elections, I will seek refuge in something Dr. Farijan said 2005. He said irregularities in election do not mean anything but become issues only when they are found to have favored one particular party. Quote, many people do not understand election irregularities, which come in diversities and 1,000 times. The most important thing for consideration is what the irregularities were, the pattern, and whether they have favored one party or not. So irregularities could adversely affect the integrity of an election. We don't necessarily have to be fraudulent. Yes.
Does it make sense to you when you follow this pink sheet thing? Pink sheets getting missing elsewhere.
First of all, those suspects, those who have been arrested, are they bona fide EC officials? Is that established? I believe so. 2, the pink sheets, are they authentic? Truly from EC? I'm told so. 3, where are those sheets kept after elections? The integrity of the custody of election material is at stake here. How are they kept and where and who is in charge? Okay, and then the timing of signing. Are they not done immediately after the polls, the counting? Why are they counting it a month and going to sign a document a month or 2 later? These are fundamental issues, which undermine the integrity of the election system. I'm not judging yet. As for the point about it might be an MPP plot, I think that's laughable.
No, it is not. It is not.
It's a tragic.
If you follow the MPP's conduct after this election,
you're about to say you ran out of time.
It's speculative.
Let me give just some 30 seconds to Dr. Sule Garba.
Given their conduct.
Like Kweku, I suspect that the suspects will be arraigned before court and somebody is going to pass judgment. I'm just amazed. And off stage, I need to ask Nana, I'm just amazed how somehow for the MPP, there's always divine intervention. Savulugu was one of the sites cited where irregularities and numbers may have been problematic. And somehow, God Almighty happens to have just intervened to get some pink sheets, and that's where Felix's to get him arrested. That's where Felix's notion of somehow for the MPP divine intervention.
Wait until we are through with court, because as far as Nana Akomia is concerned, this is a dramatic vindication of the NPP's case pending in court now. Thank you very much for watching. This is your Joy News channel on Multi TV. You have been listening to us also on Joy 99.7 FM and affiliate stations across the country. This is Newsfile, your most authoritative news analysis show. My name is Samson Ladia Yanini. My guests have been Felix Ofosu-Kwakye, Abdul Malik Kukubaku Jr., Nana Akomia, and Dr. Sule Garba. He is a senior coordinator of policy at the presidency. Thank you very much. Coming up next is the news.